on his head. Now, if you genuinely think, and look, we could very well in this audience be exploring the delusions we're talking about. If you genuinely are a smart guy and you think, I think that's right. The guy was squeaky clean for 75 years. Then he became a habitual criminal.
This is such a lie. Squeaky clean for What is the what's the contractors thing where he's not paying his contractors? Where did that come from? Where does the housing discrimination suit come from? Where does the fucking defamation lawsuit from the Central Park 5 come from? Where Donald Trump was not squeaky clean. What the fuck are you talking about?
Quite frankly, you need to subscribe to Ringold.
Okay. Minecraft is up, so I just need to do this.
It was a negotiating tactic.
It was a it was a lie to negotiate.
It's a negotiating tactic, and you
Well,
actually
the costs
know
get
it
too high.
because
I
you
do
just
know it.
admitted it.
I didn't.
Please welcome to the stage.
We were given pretty broad leeway over, I guess, what to chat about tonight, insofar as
Wait, why can I not?
Trump and MAGA and
It always fucking does
US
this. Oh my god, I'm killing myself. Okay, wait, hold on.
crimes, and then we have a president who has
Stop.
clearly
I'm
committed crimes.
so annoyed right now. Oh my god. It wouldn't let me change the playback speed, and then I refresh it, and then it puts me like 12 minutes ahead in the video. Why? For what?
Your understanding is of like the Mar-a-Lago documents case for the classified information that Trump took from the White House and refused to return.
I'm happy to get into it, but before we do, if I can explore the idea you just mentioned a moment ago about alternative realities. I assume what you're saying is that the left lives in a certain type of a bubble, but it's a reality-based bubble. The right lives in a bubble that is fake and not reality-based. And so, according to you, one half of the country is essentially deluded, and the other half of the country is sane. See, I think this is a very poor way to try to conceptualize politics in general. It's the reason it's a poor way is that if you look at any political divide, particularly the really severe political divides, if we go back, for example, to 1860, you could take the view that, which was the view of the South, Lincoln was a moron, Lincoln is a dictator, Lincoln's an idiot, and the Republicans in the North make no sense at all. Or you could take the opposite view, that everyone in the South is a moron, they're living in a bubble, they don't understand reality, and therefore one side is completely right and the other side is completely wrong. To me, the reason this is a very poor way to comprehend reality is that it requires you ultimately to believe that virtually one half of the entire country lives in delusion. Democracy would make no sense if this were truly the case. In reality, the complex thing to do, particularly when there is a divide, and I think this is what we have to work toward, and it'd be really interesting if we did that in this debate, is if I can advance a theory about Trump that explains not just the 75 million people or so who voted for him, but also the 71 million or so who voted against him. And if I can account for both, and similarly, I would demand of you the same thing. You advance a theory that is a little more sophisticated than simply saying everybody who votes for Trump is a dummy, or they're listening to other dummies and swallowing their dumb stuff. This does not do justice to our fellow citizens. So I'm just objecting to this framing of reality. We can discuss specific aspects of reality, and I'm happy to start where you want, and then I'll take you where I want to go. But I'd like you to comment, first of all, if you agree with me that each of us needs to advance tonight a theory that is good enough, not just to feed the prejudices of the people on our own side, which may be the majority of the audience here, but genuinely accounts for the other side.
So I would agree, but I would disagree that a genuine accounting for both sides requires you to admit, or requires you to concede that both sides have a similar factual foundation. Sometimes when you go to the hospital, sometimes you get diagnosed with a really bad disease, sometimes the prognosis is it's untreatable. I would be uncomfortable if the doctor told me, well, we're looking at two different diagnoses, but this one is really bad, so we're just going to favor the other one instead. Unfortunately, that's not how the real world works. It might be that at times in our history, there are certain sides of our country that are deluded. Now, you use the word dummy. I would say they're not stupid. I think that the capacity for even an ordinary person that, a pretentious liberal or some online guy might say, oh, this guy's an idiot. They're not stupid. Like, people have a tremendous capacity for a ton of information. But I would argue that there has been an entire conservative media apparatus that has been aimed at engaging in the delusion of these people for the purposes of trying to make the unappealing appealing or the indefensible defensible. And that's the thing that I'm kind of attacking. Like, is half the country deluded? I would say right now, to a large extent, yes, but that's not because they're stupid, and it's not by accident, it's by design. And I think part of what I would really like to dig into is part of it is not even being able to agree fundamentally on like things that are factually true. You brought up that north-south divide. The difference that you were talking about there was one of legal perspective, was a conceptual perspective difference on do states have the right to secede from the union, how much right does an individual state have over the federal government. That same debate taking place today, it would be somebody saying in the South, oh, we don't even have slaves, all of the people here live equally, and people in the North saying, in the South, they literally torture these people and throw them in the river for fun, and they don't even use them for work, right? That's the level of, assuming both sides are being deluded, right? That's the level of delusion that we're on today. We don't have disagreements in law or disagreements in concept or idea or narrative about the country. It's like very foundational disagreements on things that we shouldn't have that much of a factual disagreement on.
Well, so I take it that what you're saying is that in the Civil War, there were genuinely intelligent people on both sides, and they actually disagreed about what kind of America they wanted. They disagreed about their economic interests. They disagreed about on constitutional interpretation. They disagreed about whether they wanted to retain the status quo or go into a new type of America. Now, I would argue that we're having very much that exact same kind of fundamental debate right now. Let's just take, for example, the phrase, make America great again. Bit of a cliche, Grant. But I would say that the implicit...
Is that an optical bullet that Dinesh would want to bite? That we're in a similar spot to the Civil War right now? And that MAGA is the traditional... is like the conservative party? I don't know, man. That seems like a really weird thing to agree to.
In that is a big idea. That there was an America that we lived in. You could say it's the America of the 50s, the America of 1965, the America of 1980. You can kind of pick your own preferred date. But the things worked better in this country before, in the past. We have messed up. We have become more polarized, more hateful, more violent. Our goals have begun to pull further apart. I would argue that in the Reagan years, for example, the debates were not so much about goals, but about means. We all agreed that America, if you were to take a poll in 1980 or the early 80s and ask Americans, do you think America should be strong, prosperous? Do you think we should have law and order? Do you think America should be an example to the world? Do you think that most people have given the chance who want to come here? You got yes, 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 and yes. Now, you might disagree if we create a prosperous pie, how should that pie be shared? The argument was about that. But on the need for prosperity, on the principles of the founding, no disagreement about goals. Now, we are in America where we can't agree about goals. And I would say that one half of the country, my half, Trump's half, we think that there's a better America we want to go back to. You don't. You want to take us into some progressive utopia. So right there, this is hardly a disagreement about facts. I mean, I guess it could be a disagreement about facts if you want to argue the facts of what life was like in 1980 or what the GDP was. I'm happy to discuss that. But I guess what I'm really saying is it is a conflict of visions. We want a society in which immigrants come to assimilate. We want a society in which affirming your identity takes a subordinate role to our identity as Americans. We want a society in which free markets are the engine to prosperity. We want a society in which we recognize that the world is made up.
No, they don't. They don't want this world. They don't want a world where immigrants are viewed as like Americans and that they have to just give up their national identity to cohere to American ideals, and that's what it takes to be an American. That's not the reality that MAGA wants. What world are we living in where we say that that's what MAGA wants to do? That's insane. That's absolutely not true.
Made up of very dangerous people, and sometimes you have to smash in a few heads in order to protect your own interests. We want to live in a society where there's the rule of law, and if you come here illegally, there's every right to send you home. There's no such thing as a good lawbreaker or a bad lawbreaker any more than there's such a thing as good discrimination and bad discrimination. So I've just articulated several, and I could keep going, principles. This has nothing to do with whether Trump had a bag of documents in Mar-a-Lago. It is a conflict of visions, and it seems to me that you are denying that. Either that or you just agree right now that all the principles I've articulated are yours as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say exactly that. The issue that I have with the more abstract, high-level conceptual conversations is that everybody agrees with these things. That people should, yeah, of course, people should be here relatively, legally as far as you can be. People should be here
as far as you can be. What is it? This is kind of like saying I favor law breaking. I don't favor law breaking unless it's
sure. I say as far as you can be because some immigration stuff is hazy. So, for instance, sometimes conservatives seem like they're okay with asylum seekers, like they suddenly are with South Africans who are white. Other times they seem like they don't believe in asylum seeking at all. So I'm cutting out a little bit of on the edge here for presidential things like TPS, temporary protected status, things like DACA. For the most part, broadly speaking, I largely agree that everybody should be here in this legal process as possible. I think that people should, as far as they can, try not to break any laws. People get speeding tickets. Obviously, you shouldn't be shot for this. But broadly speaking, everything you say, everybody agrees with. But the issue is that when we have these high-level conceptual disagreements, say, for instance, we should have a president who doesn't commit crimes, and then we have a president who has clearly committed crimes, and one side sees that very plainly, and the other side screams lawfare. That's not true. There is a factual distinction there. That's not a difference of ideology or a difference of vision. It's a difference of understanding factually of what's in the record. And the unfortunate thing is we're not talking about complicated physics or chemistry or biology. It's very simple facts. If you can read a simple indictment, you can see how things are laid out. And it should be a thing that 95% of the population can grasp and understand. Like, for instance, that Donald Trump took documents from the White House that he didn't have authorization to keep. He showed them to multiple people at Mar-a-Lago. He refused to cooperate first with the National Archives and Records Administration and then with the FBI. And then eventually his home was raided. Some documents were never recovered. The whole time he was in the complete and total wrong in multiple levels. But the right refused to acknowledge this, screamed lawfare over and over again. And then when you push them on things like, don't you think it's good to have like a rule of law? They appeal to these high-level concepts like, well, freedom and the past was good and all this. It's like, well, we can't talk about any particular instances of anything happening. It's a pointless conversation.
Well, I find that this habit is hardly confined to the right. I'm something of an expert on the 2020 election, and I've given talks about it. And every time I talk about it, someone goes, well, there clearly is nothing wrong in the 2020 election because there were 50 cases where these things were adjudicated. Now, there's not a single case in which the actual allegations of fraud were adjudicated. On all kinds of procedural obstacles or issues of standing, these cases were dismissed. You should have brought the case before the election. You had to do that. Obviously, the fraud was not obvious then. If you brought it after the election, it's moot. Or this is brought at the state level. It needs to be at the federal.
By the way, this isn't even true. Like a lot of the in pretrial, they heard the evidence. The certain judges, the judges would make comments on how strong the evidence was or how strong a case was based off of the evidence. It's not the case that none of this evidence was ever adjudicated. Now, it wasn't ever like the reason for dismissal, sure. But like the idea that none of this was ever adjudicated was just not true. Like the judges explicitly commented on the merits of the evidence multiple times.
Federal level, and so the procedural adjudication is considered adequate to establish the veracity or the validity of the 2020 election.
Just as a quick thing.
I'll just finish my point, and you can jump
we
in.
do the 2020 election. So you concede on the whole Mar-a-Lago thing that Trump was retaining documents, and then we can move to the
No, we
2020
haven't
election.
addressed Mar-a-Lago. I'm setting up the intellectual groundwork by saying that on the 2020 election, statements are made that are accepted as gospel by the left. Let's take a simple one that was repeated ad nauseum. The 2020 election was the safest, most secure election in U.S. history. To which I ask, where is the evidence that there was less fraud in 2020 than in 2016, 2012, 2008, 2004? Where is that demonstration? Who has actually done a comparative evaluation?
The DHS. The reason that people bring up this is the most secure election in U.S. history, the comparisons were done by DHS. That's where the quote comes from. DHS, Trump's DHS. That's where. That's who.
Of the amount of fraud in recent, forget about old elections, and shown that there was less in 2020. The answer is not only has this never been demonstrated, it has never been attempted. And so an utterly idiotic statement, almost preposterous on its face. We know that this election we just had, and we're proclaiming it to be the safest ever, with zero empirical evidence produced to support that. And yet, the entire left, to my knowledge, without exception, went along, nodded its head, accepted this as true, became very scornful of any attempts to show the contrary.
It's Trump's
Doesn't this
DHS.
show factual dogmatism on the left that is just as corrosive as anything on the right?
No, so I mean, we can go through any of these statements. I'm still putting a pin in the Mar-a-Lago thing because I think it's important to go back to, but I'm very familiar with the 2020 election.
Okay.
I think the issue is that, one, when people say, well, it wasn't adjudicated on the facts, it was tossed on standing or procedural grounds, that's bad for the person bringing the case. If you're losing on standing, then you must have never had a serious case to begin with, because that is literally the easiest part of a case to survive. To build a prima facie case saying that I have authorization to bring this case in front of this court has subject matter jurisdiction, and it's the appropriate venue to hear the case.
Andrew JD is here. What's going on? Let's go. Listen, all right. I don't want to glaze too hard, okay? But I am a fan, okay? I do watch the streams, buddy. I appreciate you stopping by, buddy. Especially on YouTube. What are the odds?
My complaints where I'm alleging that a law was broken. In half of these, they didn't even have the remedies that they were looking for was to toss the entire outcome of that election, which is an insane remedy if you're looking for that. A court's not even going to bother to hear the case, because the whole point of a court hearing a case is that they're going to grant you some kind of relief. If the court can't do anything about it, then the court's not going to listen to it. Number one. Number two, for the evidence that was made public, we know that for a lot of this, it was a blatant lie. So for instance, when we watched Trump's lawyers show and we watched Trump talk about the hidden boxes and that in the State Farm arena that were pulled out from under the table and put back, and we don't know where they came from. We do know where they came from. And you can tell because if you watch the full 6-hour video where she's giving a presentation to the state election board or state legislature or whatever, you can see her fast forward 10 minutes where they were counting, they finished counting for the night.
I'm a fan of you. Let's go. Let's go. Super fire. Hey man, I appreciate it. If you ever want to chat, listen, my line's open. Okay. If you ever want to chat, if you ever want to dunk on some people together, my line is open. There's a Discord in the description, I think. And my DMs are always open. All right, buddy?
Slide them under. 10 minutes later, they get a call saying, actually, we're going to resume counting because we want to get these results out faster. They take the same boxes out, they put them on the table. Not only was that a complete and total bold-faced lie when it was first presented in court or presented to the public, it was a lie that Trump repeated up to and including his speech on January 6th, where he encouraged his followers to go and riot at the Capitol to try to delay the outcome of the election. So every single case has been some variation of them not knowing if a law was broken. You can listen to hours and hours of deposition. You can read the subpoenas. You can read the judge's decisions. There's a reason why you guys will say, well, all of them were thrown out. None was adjudicated on the merits. Trump, was president for 4 years. He had Barr look into all of these claims. Barr said that all of them were BS. Trump is president now. He has the ability to go back and look at stuff. Nothing has been dug up. In fact, the first time Trump was president, when he also made claims that the election was rigged, he put together an election board to look at if there was any impropriety or fraud that happened in any of the states, and they found nothing. They disbanded it in like a year. For the final point, you bring this point up that
Destiny,
wow, it's crazy that
he's going fast, and I understand because you know, in these kind of formal things, you can't fight on every point super hard or as hard as he would want to. That election board thing, there was so much crazy shit happening with that election board thing where they were like hiding like different evidence that they were getting from the Democrats, and then the Democrats had to sue to get the information from the Republicans on that committee. And then once a court agreed that the Republicans couldn't hide the information from the Democrats, that Trump dissolved the entire board so he wouldn't need to hand over the evidence. There's so much crazy shit with that board too that he's kind of glossing over. We can get something going in the future. I'm about to head out in a few hours to AZ for AmFest. Yeah, I saw that was happening. I know that I've been talking to Corbin about it a little bit. I'm pretty sure he's going. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. That's the one that's being headlined by Mockler and Destiny, right?
They say this was the safest election ever because there hasn't been a comparative analysis on fraud. I think the point of the statement was to say that there were more people, more cameras, more systems that were looking at this election than in any prior election. And I would argue that just like how Doge went through the entire government and massively failed at discovering any waste, fraud, or abuse, Donald Trump and all of his cronies have been looking at so much election-related stuff, and the only fraud, weird stuff we've seen has come from the Republican side. Tina Peters being a great example of that. Trump trying to steal the election with his false elector sites being another great example of that.
All right, so let me offer a couple thoughts. Number one, if you're right that a bungled legal effort failed on account of the incompetence of the people who tried to prove the fraud, I would argue by the same token that the Democratic goofballs who launched 90-plus charges against Trump in multiple jurisdictions were equally dumb because they made claims that they were unable to sustain. The cases were thrown out, made moot, exposed to the public for their prima facie.
Okay, so, all right. If anybody claims pre-watching, it's true. All right, I watched. This is about as far as I got into this debate the first time around when I tried to watch it, and then I decided that it was content. This is such a dog shit comparison here. So, okay, he's comparing, I think 62 cases where nobody could prove standing. Except for one person, I'm pretty sure. I think only one case was actually able to go to any sort of trial or any sort of adjudication. Nobody could even get standing, and they compare this to like criminal prosecutions that were thrown out due to re-election, due to standing DOJ policy. That doesn't even comment on the validity of the criminal probe. That doesn't comment on the validity of any of the trial or any of the process that Donald Trump was going through. That doesn't comment on the investigation at all. It just get dropped. It got dropped because you dumb fucks elected him. I see how celebrities get attention in your chat. Listen, that's a little true. That's a little true. Why? Oh shit! I didn't even see that. Cringy commented. Well, because like most of the stuff, Tron, I feel like most of the stuff that you're talking about, I feel like most of the stuff you're talking about is just agreeing with what I'm saying. Being honest, if you said hi, I would have said hi. Adam, Steven, Big Boy's there. Micah, Erfan. I know Erudite. Staxiums, I don't know. Brian Shapiro, I know. So I know like most of the people there. I obviously know you. Micah Arafat. I wonder if that's not like the Micah Knuckles kid, is it? I hope not. Oh, no. Okay, that's not who I'm thinking of. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's pretty neat. If it's being streamed, then I'm going to watch it. Probably not live, but I'll watch it.
Idiocy, or they capsized of their own weight. They were withdrawn. Fannie Willis was basically had her own problems and had to withdraw. The successors basically decided that's the end of that. So what I'm getting at is either we rely on the legal process as a pretty fair adjudicator of these kinds of claims, in which case you got a grant that the case against Trump ended up, think of it, you didn't have one shot. You had like 7 shots at this guy. You failed in all of them. Even in the one place where you quote got him on the ultimate bogus case, which was in New York, the judge himself was too timid to impose a verdict and basically says, Mr. Trump, you can go. I wish you well.
So and this speaks to like it being bad faith beyond like anything else. If you say that the judge ruled against him, that he did commit these criminal, like these crimes that were tried in criminal court, how are you comparing that to somebody who didn't prove standing? You're comparing it being stupid for somebody who did successfully try and prosecute the president to somebody who couldn't even prove standing in a case to prove that. Yeah, I don't know. I'll be running camera and audio for the whole event, except for my debate, obviously. Oh, word. Yeah, I'll definitely be watching.
Even the judge knew that he was part of a political game and he had to fess up. Because if he was really enforcing the law, think of it, if you or I were found guilty of 34 felonies, the judge would have said, I'm imposing a sentence. My sentence might be overturned or maybe held to be invalid.
Also notice,
broken the law 34 times. In fact, think of the stupidity.
Shut the fuck up. Okay. Also notice, they never talk about, I hate when people comment on like legal shit. And I'm not even a lawyer, but whenever somebody comments on the validity of a judicial decision or a ruling of a judge or whatever, they should always know more than the fact that it got thrown out. Because if Dinesh, I'm sure he does know. That's why I feel like it's dishonest. If he said why it got thrown out, this argument completely falls apart. You say, oh, well, if he did something, he would have been held accountable. Well, why? What did the judge say as to why he didn't charge him? Oh, it's because he got reelected and he didn't want to interfere with his presidency. So that doesn't speak to what point are you trying to make then?
This was 34 different checks, so apparently it's 34 different felonies. The lawfare of it couldn't be more obvious or blatant. Now,
Why did the jury? Why did the jury convict him?
And also, Dinesh doesn't bring up any problems with the trial or bring up any problems with the investigation or anything. He just says lawfare because there weren't harsh penalties put on by the judge, even though you guys elected him president.
What's that?
Why did the jury convict him if it was just lawfare?
Because a jury in New York, like a jury in DC, is going to be... Well, all right.
Aren't you saying then that half the country is living in delusion if you can't even trust a jury of every single person? A single
True.
person could say, I don't agree with the verdict here.
You think the OJ jury got it right?
The OJ, that's a totally different case.
Well,
with
I mean, if
factual
you trust
accounting.
the jury, then they got it right.
I can say that juries
Don't
might.
you agree?
I can say, wait, I can disagree with juries sometimes. You just said that there are two sections of the United States in New York and DC, and I'm willing to bet you'd say other states where there is no jury that could hear. Oh, well, I'm curious. Actually, fine. There are things in the OJ case that I think it seems like he was clearly guilty of something. What law in New York State that he was convicted of breaking, that he was sentenced for 34 felony counts for, do you think he didn't actually break? Did he not lie when he paid his lawyer Cohen a fee that was actually just a money transfer to Stormy Daniels and then commit a bookkeeping fraud in the furtherance of that lie, which is why the misdemeanor was upgraded to a felony? Do you think that's not true?
One of the problems with living in this kind of society today, and one of the essential defining elements of lawfare, is simply to ask this question. If anybody else did that, or if Trump himself did it, but was not running for president, would these charges have been brought? And again, we're all watching this. We're not on the jury.
The answer is yes, by the way. The answer is incredibly clearly yes. Like, I get lied to so much about what predicated these elections or the fact that, what predicated these investigations or like when these investigations started. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. The classified documents case probe started after Mueller was appointed. He got Cohen, or like Cohen was gotten in relation to his investigation. Yeah, Cohen was gotten in regard to Mueller's investigation, and then they try Cohen. Cohen rats on Trump, and then that starts the Trump investigation. Well, all within like a matter of, like, after they actually get Cohen, I'm pretty sure the investigation into Trump starts really, really soon after. Like, the idea that this was just brought because Donald Trump was running for president is just horseshit. Like, it's the natural progression of these investigations. Or it's the same thing for the classified documents one. Like, this started because whatever agency or organization is responsible for like getting the archives back, the classified documents back if they report any missing, asked Donald Trump, hey, can you return these documents? And then they asked him again, and then they asked him again, and then the criminal probe started then, after he refused to return them like a billion times. This isn't like, it's not like this was just brought spur of the moment. I'm pretty sure the last request by the agency to get the agency or the organization to get the documents back was like a couple months before they brought the criminal charges. That's a natural progression. Now, if this had been stagnant for like a year or whatever, and then they all of a sudden bring charges 2 days after he announces his election bid, that's a much stronger case. Okay, that's not what happened. It was like a month or two after. I think the judge should have given him jail time. It's his job to follow the guidelines. Okay, so I personally agree, but I can understand why a judge didn't. Like, I can understand the rationale that the judge gave, and there's a reason that Dinesh isn't giving the rationale that the judge gave, because he also agrees with the rationale that the judge gave. And if the judge actually didn't pose any sort of repercussions, then the conservatives would have been way more freaking out about that than any sort of than letting him off, right? Like this is a lose-lose situation, because the conservatives would have been complaining much louder if a judge held him liable for the actual punishment for that crime that he was found guilty of. You know for a fact that conservatives would be freaking out. They're like, this is the sitting president of the United States. But whatever, you can attack if we show you grace, attack if we don't. Super based. Good hoodie, thanks. OJ jury got it right. The evidence is strong that he was framed by cops. I don't know. I don't know anything about the OJ case.
Spectators from the outside, we've got to use a certain rule of common sense. You have this guy Trump. He's in the thick of New York real estate. He's in the thick of all these claims of bombastic claims like my Mar-a-Lago's worth X, this is worth Y, my assets are worth this. Everybody does this. Now, if all of this was so fraudulent, how does the man go 75 years of his life without a single charge? Then, interestingly, he enters politics as a Republican. 93 charges.
He doesn't, by the way. Okay, so one, the reason that he got hit with a bunch of like federal prosecutions when he was president is because two of them related to his time as president. Or no, all of them relate to his time as president, because the first one was election interference. The New York one, I'm pretty sure the predicate that they were trying to prove was election interference. The Jack Smith one was election interference. The Jack Smith, false electors case, the big boy one, was election interference. The Georgia case was election interference, and the Florida case, the Mar-a-Lago case, the other Jack Smith one, was classified documents, which were retained as his time of president. So all of his criminal indictments relate to his time as president. That's why. But also, it's not like Donald Trump had a squeaky clean record prior to him being president, and then all of a sudden there was just this big switch up. He wasn't clean prior to that either. The way I talk about that, basically, judge have an egotistical but not necessarily bad thing reason to not want their rulings to be overturned, and any sentence imposed on Trump would have been overturned 100%. So I understand the judge not wanting to deal with that shit. I understand that as well. There is probably like an egotistical thing going into that as well. Even if it's not egotistical, though, like it probably costs a lot of money to go through the appeals process and everything, and that might have like a mark on your record if like a bunch of your rulings get overturned. But regardless of even that, like no one actually, it's all concern trolling. They don't actually think this. They would have been freaking out if he got a sentence. They would have been freaking out if he didn't get a sentence. None of this is actually any sort of like genuine argument. It seems super reasonable. And this is the same thing that Jack Smith did when he dropped the election interference charges and the documents charges. This is exactly what Mueller did when he refused to prosecute or recommend charges for the collusion or the obstruction, is that criminally trying a sitting president is against DOJ policy, right? So it feels like a natural extension that not only should the DOJ not try him while he's sitting president, but I mean, he probably shouldn't have like giant criminal penalties incurred upon him while he's the sitting president. Like that naturally makes sense. I probably don't agree. But like that just makes sense. That's a natural progression. I might even agree. I don't know if I want like sitting that harsh of punishments against somebody who's tasked with leading the country. Although in an ideal world, if I say that they shouldn't be held criminally liable for that, the first thing that Congress should do is impeach, because he should be found criminally liable. So that's the natural extension of my worldview, but they don't agree. Every MAGA argument ultimately is concern trolling. Yeah, super true. House arrest would have been super funny. Like house arrest is probably the strongest argument. I don't know if you could actually put the president in like federal jail or like federal prison. That seems pretty crazy. House arrest would have been super funny. I agree, though. White House arrest.
Charges are dropped on his head. Now, if you genuinely think, and look, we could very well in this audience be exploring the delusions we're talking about. If you genuinely are a smart guy and you think, I think that's right. The guy was squeaky clean for 75 years. Then he became a habitual criminal.
This is such a
and committed
lie.
93
Squeaky clean for 7. What is the fucking, what's the contractors thing where he's not paying his contractors? Where did that come from? Where does the housing discrimination suit come from? Where does the fucking defamation lawsuit from the Central Park 5 come from? Where Donald Trump was not squeaky clean. What the fuck are you talking about?
offenses warranting the guy being jailed for life, a guy who just happens to have been the president of the United States and on the verge of being reelected a second time, but you don't have to worry about that if you can put
God,
him
I
away.
hope Destiny pushes
And
back on that.
doesn't
This is
raise
such
any issues of
horseshit.
political targeting, Stalinism, find me the man and I'll find you the crime. If you genuinely don't think any of that is at issue, then we are at a little bit of an intellectual breakdown here.
So this isn't an intellectual breakdown. This is a bad conversation about politics with your family at Thanksgiving. There has to be a better factual analysis than, isn't it weird? Isn't it weird that, so yeah, so the
Thank
34
you.
felonies
True.
that he was charged with and convicted of in New York State, he did those. For the Mar-a-Lago documents case, well, this is the thing, he couldn't have possibly been charged with a crime like this before having a security clearance or being in a job with security clearance because he wouldn't have had access to
True.
these documents. So for the Mar-a-Lago case, he took classified material from the White House, stored it in an area where classified material was
That's the
kept.
case for all of his criminal charges, though. He couldn't have been charged for these prior. I mean, I guess he theoretically could have for NY, but the incentive was to keep information away from the voting public in 2016, right? The incentive for the first Jack Smith case was to steal the election for his re-election, right? That's the same aim for the Georgia one. He wouldn't have had security clearance for the documents case. Literally every single one of his criminal indictments couldn't have happened prior to him being president. I think Trump should have the stigma of being a felon. I agree. And most people don't know that he's legally a felon. Like in most states, he can't own a gun. I disagree that most people don't know that. Most people do know that. It just doesn't sit in because I agree he wasn't really held accountable. But I think the people do know that. It just doesn't like click, that doesn't clock to them.
He showed other people some of that classified material, and then he resisted efforts from NARA and the FBI to retrieve said material, and he was directing his employees to hide it and lie to the FBI when they were requesting information about this material. This
The
is
first part of
incredibly
that is
unique.
true, and all the rest of it is not true.
Which part of it was not true?
The first part of it, that he took the documents, is true. The second question is, how does a president who takes his own documents, which he has the plenary power to declassify, how does he prima facie
mental
violate the law? Especially
mental
when you consider that
declassification.
pretty much every
True.
other president, going back to Nixon, had documents. Mike had documents. Joe Biden had documents in his garage, including a bunch sitting in his car. These documents were fully exposed. There were documents at the Penn Biden Center, accessible to everyone. And yet the guy who looks into it goes, I don't think we should charge this guy because he's kind of forgetful and he won't really withstand trial because he tends not to remember things. I mean, since when does somebody get a pass from a serious offense because they don't have a very good memory of the stuff that they...
Since when does somebody get a pass from criminal prosecution because you can't prove a guilty mind? Is that what he's asking?
They manifestly did. So when you suddenly develop this kind of selective aggression, Trump has done all these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you conveniently forget that presidents have routinely taken their own stuff.
Dude, his mic etiquette is such dog shit. Oh, okay, no,
Then
never
again,
mind. It's going
I have
dead.
to
Never
say
mind, I'm lying.
that this looks to me quite clearly a case of isolating Trump. I mean, the way we know...
Well, here, real quick, just on this, because you laid out some facts, and the facts...
You say he obstructed...
Well, wait, real quick. So you say these words, prima facie. Prima facie means has the person who is under the jurisdiction of some place, has he met the prerequisite elements to have committed the crime? So the crime of retention of classified materials requires intent. So one funny thing that conservatives like to do is they like to say that, well, Hur said that Biden was forgetful and he wouldn't be able to stand trial because he was forgetful.
You're about to get so mad with how dishonest his characterization of the Hur report is. Yeah. Listen, okay. I've only read as much of the Hur report as I needed to in relation to the Rob Noor discussion. And that was like super, super cursory. My impression is the reason that he didn't try him wasn't that he wasn't like competent to stand trial. It's that they couldn't prove a guilty mind. It's like he didn't really he would show classified, or he would prevent from showing classified information because it was classified, and then a couple days later he would come back and show the classified information without making that comment, right? That's where like kind of the old man thing comes into. That's my impression. I don't know, like, if you can't prove the guilty mind, if he didn't know that he was sharing classified information, then that's typical. If you read 10% of it, that's going to be enough to get pissed right now. Oh, okay.
Not true. What Herb was speaking to when he was speaking of Biden's state of mind was that he probably forgot that he had these documents here or that he was storing these things. The crime
Okay.
that
Yeah,
speaks,
true.
the
Thank
federal
you.
statutes that
Okay.
talk
That
about
was
the
right.
retention of classified material that makes it a crime is knowing that you actually have them. That's why when Biden contacted the FBI and said, hey, we have classified documents here. We think you guys should come and grab them. They weren't convicted or charged with any crimes because it seems like they weren't trying to intentionally store classified material. As opposed to Donald Trump, who was showing documents to people, and you say, well, they were his, right? Why did he say?
So I mean, regardless.
twice,
So
I put them
even
unclassified?
I mean, like everything that Destiny's saying is comporting with my belief anyway. So based. So like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, her concluded that there wasn't enough evidence to prove that he knew he wasn't supposed to have the documents stored how and where he did. Yeah, I thought so. The biggest concern is like the ghostwriter story where he was like sharing the information with the ghostwriter that was writing that biography thing. But even that, I don't think shows a guilty mind. But yeah, like everything that Destiny said is like, I think he's addressing this point well, so I'm good.
By these, or I could have declassified these, but I didn't. And also, the second quick thing, the president does not have plenary authority for declassification of everything, especially when it comes to the Department of Energy, which has nuclear secrets, especially when you're talking about TSSCI, SAP, separate access programs, or special access programs that are part of our nuclear secrets that Donald Trump was keeping at Mar-a-Lago. So even that he couldn't have declassified on his own.
Here's the problem. I mean, had this case proceeded all the way, and these elements of the crime that you're describing been proven, we could then debate what was going on. I'll give you the Trump side of it. I took these documents. I was contacted by the National Archives, NARA, I guess it's called, about the fact you need to give some of these documents back. What does some mean here? Trump is like, some of them may be mine, some of them I may have to return. And so a process now begins of bargaining back and forth. At one point, the FBI comes to Mar-a-Lago. Remember, Mar-a-Lago is a protected facility. Comes to Mar-a-Lago and puts a padlock on the storage facility.
Maybe I'm tripping. Did Trump ever return any? I don't even know if Trump ever returned any. And also, I fucking hate this where they're like, oh, well, has any of this been proven? No, because you elected him before it was litigated. If you wanted it to be proven, you should have waited to reelect him. You reelected him to prevent him to prevent this from being litigated. That was the whole point.
Where the documents are held. So what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with a president who finishes his term. People come into the White House, clear all the stuff out. Where are they going to move it? They move it, not surprisingly, to the residence, Mar-a-Lago. And then begins this process of negotiating over these documents. If you're saying, based upon the fact that you think that laws were broken, I would say, what, because Destiny thinks that the president broke the law, we should lock him up? No. If you can show me a legal process where these elements of the crime were proven, we could look at it.
Well, there is. That's what an indictment is. It's showing these are the laws that we're saying that he broke. This is the evidence.
That's how subpoenas work.
The grand jury returned an okay to charge Donald Trump with these crimes.
Okay.
Also, you said that Mar-a-Lago was secured, not secured for the storage of classified information. And if Donald Trump truly had nothing to hide and he was cooperating, returning things as he should, why was he having his employee hide boxes from his own lawyers so that they would not be fully truthful, not of their own fault, but because they had no idea?
Why do people not bring this up? This is like the easiest thing. If you think that Donald Trump has like the mental ability to declassify as long as he's president, what, like, you don't even need to touch on that argument, really. Donald Trump said in the video when he was sharing the attack plans for Iran, I know this is classified and I shouldn't be sharing it to you, but here it is anyway. Unless you think that Donald Trump can declassify things after he's president, like post facto, I don't know. I also, full transparency, I don't know if I just used that term right. I'm pretty sure I did, though. Like, after the fact is what I meant. Trump did give away some documents. I hate how Dinesh says sometime later the FBI shows up like it's like fucking months and emails and messages and messages and messages later. And subpoenas, yeah, like you can't negotiate a subpoena back and forth. I guess you can negotiate what is subpoenaed, but why wouldn't you just... If you genuinely thought you had a claim to this, why wouldn't you just turn it over and say, hey, but I think I have a claim to this. Like, this isn't classified. Like, I don't know. Like, that doesn't prevent you from giving the documents back, first of all. And second of all, Donald Trump acknowledged that they were classified in a fucking video. Yeah, he said, I could have declassified this, but I didn't.
With the FBI about documents that Trump was retaining and that he was having brought to his room, going over, taking some back, keeping others, and then telling...
Like, that's almost as bad as, like, I don't even know if you could get a clearer showing of a guilty mind than, like if a murderer said, like, oh, man, I'm just, like, so tired of premeditating this murder I'm gonna do. That feels like the level of proof that we have against Donald Trump. How is that not enough?
Ploy to lie to the lawyers about what they were hiding.
Whenever you have an indictment, the prosecution, in this case, it was the Biden administration.
It was Jack Smith. It was a special
Okay,
prosecutor.
Jack
It was not
Smith
Biden.
was a special prosecutor
Yeah.
appointed by the Biden regime.
It wasn't appointed by Biden. It was appointed by Merrick Garland. The
He
Attorney
was appointed by
General.
Merrick Garland.
Characterizing the bank repossessing your home as the bank sent me a message and asked me to pay my bill, and then sometime later they kicked me out.
He was not part
It's
of the Biden
confusing.
regime.
Trump wants to
Hello?
directly control his attorney general, but most presidents don't do
Oh,
that
come
because it's
on.
seen as corrupt.
Merrick Garland was an objective, fair-minded. He was not making any kind of political...
Why wasn't the special prosecutor appointed on day one?
You're actually trying to get me to enter into your dream world here. And I'm
only talking facts.
I'm not... There are no facts.
There were facts.
No, because an indictment...
No facts. True. Thank you, Dinesh. The place to challenge that is in court, challenging the subpoena. Yeah, right. Yeah. Also, just to be super clear, there's no direction of Joe Biden directing, or there's no evidence of Joe Biden directing Merrick Garland. There's evidence of him in private, not to Merrick Garland, expressing that he's frustrated that Merrick Garland didn't bring something quicker. There's no evidence of direction. There's no evidence of weaponization. Now, the fact that Dinesh D'Souza would say, oh yeah, let's pretend like Merrick Garland is a fair and balanced attorney general. Meanwhile, he's defending Pam Bondi. Give me a fucking break.
Indictment is allegations. Unless the indictment is presented in court, the other side gets to fight back. It's like if I were to take any indictment and read it, and then I think, oh, the guy obviously did it because he did this, he bought a gun, and this and that. I haven't read the counterpoints. I haven't seen the cross-examination. It hasn't
Because you
gone
didn't
forward.
let it go to
But if you
trial,
accept all the
Dinesh.
claims in the indictment as, quote, factually true, and consider that there's no other side of the matter, then it's easy to go, I got the facts.
So then wouldn't it be easy for you to just say, you know, if everything in the indictment is true, Donald Trump would be guilty of those crimes rather than try to make excuses for what was
True.
in the indictment? Because there's another weird game that I notice that conservatives play where conservatives will do this thing where they'll defend a thing, and then after they've defended the thing, they'll say that the thing that they were defending is indefensible, but if it did happen, they give justifications for it anyway. Why not just say, well, I don't believe what's in the indictment, even though you say that they're just allegations? They're
No.
not. You have to show evidence to a grand jury to secure the indictment. So there's at least some evidence that's
Exactly. And
presented.
look, the indictment contains elements of factuality and elements of subjectivity. So the factuality would be something like this. Did you take a document? Did you put it in the garage? Was it found in your Corvette? The elements of subjectivity are things like this. Were you authorized to take it? Even if you were not authorized to take it, did you follow?
So is it a statement of fact that Donald Trump did say, I did not declassify this like I should have to show you this, but here it is anyway? Is that a fact? Is that a finding of fact, or is that subjectivity?
procedures to return it? If you didn't follow those procedures, how culpable are you, let's say, for not doing that? Because there are all kinds of people who break all kinds of laws, and they're given a pass because, as you mentioned with Biden,
Come on, Destiny,
said
lock
that his
in, bring it up,
forgetfulness had to do with
please.
the documents. Wrong. It was very clear from the special counsel's report that his forgetfulness had to do with trial. We cannot take this guy to trial. He deserves to go to trial. He did break the law, but we don't think that he can withstand trial because basically his brain is fried.
I don't know
And
if
so
that's
it turns
true.
out
Anything like that, yeah.
Is that a fact or not?
No.
That's not a fact.
No, the forgetfulness had to do with the
No,
crime. The elements of the crime is the willful retention of classified material. If you walk out of a skiff and you have something on you by accident, you might get fired. Depending on your job, you'll definitely get fired. But to charge you with a crime, you need intent. Now, for every single element that you described there, well, you'd have to take them and you'd have to know that you didn't follow the right procedure. An example for showing that subjective argument might be Donald Trump showing something to somebody saying, I should have declassified
Thank
this, but I didn't.
you.
Don't look too closely.
About time.
That would be an example of like a subjective thing where, sounds like he maybe didn't have the authority to do that. Also,
Well-
the SAP level classified stuff he had in the Department of Energy, he
Even
could
that,
have never
he could
on his
have-
own declassified, and he didn't go through any proper procedures there. And I
Should have
think
been
one
a
of the most
direct
telling things
quote,
is
but
subjective
whatever.
evaluation. But one of the most telling things is that Donald Trump never denied the behavior. He never said he didn't do a thing. Instead, all the conservatives started to switch to psychic declassification as the reason why Trump
Yes.
actually
Hold
got
on.
something he wanted out of the White House.
No, look, you have the staccato style of mixing elements of truth with elements of pure garbage.
Wait, what was
Hold
the
on,
one thing? Wait, what was the one thing I just said that was pure garbage? That
I'll
wasn't
tell
true.
you. So Biden started taking classified documents when he was in the Senate. Okay? No one even thinks that Biden was non-compos mentis then. So according to you, the special prosecutor didn't bring charges because, not because Biden is gone now, but because he was gone before. And I'm saying, was he gone in the 80s? Was Biden mentally gone in the 90s when he took those documents? Why not prosecute him for those? But
We're talking about willful retention. So if he, like, why would you? He returned the documents that he had. Are you saying that? I mean, maybe if he's making the argument that he never had the ability to take them in the first place, I have to have that demonstrated to me. I don't think that that's the case. But like, and again, that's not even necessarily criminal, right? Like, the problem is retention. The problem isn't when you took it. The problem is you kept it, right? Like when you're being tried for it, when you kept it. Oh, I heard that Biden psychically reclassified them as soon as he was psychically informed that information that Trump had the ability to declassify them. True.
quite clearly, the special counsel was not talking about Biden's mind in 1995.
Shit.
It was talking about Biden's mind today.
No, it doesn't have to do about being forgetful or competent.
This is the fact that you are misstating why Biden got off the hook, pretending that it was an objective, fair-minded decision by a neutral guy, and I'm saying no. Now we turn to Trump.
Wait, what? For her, I'm just curious. Walk me through this. Why would you have a special prosecutor and then authorize him to release a report that's damning to Biden and report all of this stuff publicly if it was all politically partisan in the first place? Why not just lie about everything from the start? If they control the DOJ, the special prosecutor, and the FBI,
True.
why even report publicly that Biden had turned in documents?
True.
Well, the scandal of Biden's
Not only
documents became
that-
extremely embarrassing to the Mar-a-Lago case.
Not only that, why would you even appoint the special counsel? Do you think Donald Trump would ever exist in a world where he has a special counsel that's appointed by his attorney general that he doesn't try to fire? Like, I need to get my timeline straight. I don't know if Mueller was appointed under Obama, or I'm pretty sure he was appointed. Mueller took over the case after Trump, because Comey was fired by Trump. So yeah. Do you think there's a world that exists where Trump lets a special counsel exist and investigate him without trying to fire him? Like, he explicitly tried to get his attorney general to take power back from Mueller. He explicitly said that he would fire Jack Smith upon re-election. Do you think there's a world where this happens under Trump's presidency, where he actually has a special counsel that has any authority to investigate him for anything ever? How does this guy have sharpness? Was offered to come aboard after Comey was fired. Yeah, but so he was asking, like, I'm pretty sure he was asking his attorney general to, like, fire Mueller and take authority back over from the case because because Mueller was anti-Trump or whatever. I'm like 90% sure that was happening. He was, like, asking his attorney general to fire Mueller, and he was, like, trying to take steps to fire Mueller after he took steps to fire Comey, who was investigating him. So, like, this idea that this is anywhere comparable, that Donald Trump would even let this amount of oversight into his administration, it's just horseshit.
And so there was an immediate need. Okay, we now have to cover for our guy to make it seem like the other guy is the only guy who did something wrong.
No, why
Hold
report
on,
it at all?
let me give you my theory, and then you tell me why it's wrong. So what does the DOJ do? They pick a guy in Delaware, nominally a Republican, but nevertheless he's under the thumb of the Biden DOJ. He's reporting to them. He has to ultimately survive their scrutiny. Merrick Garland is still in charge. And so this guy conveniently comes out, Biden.
Originally, the deputy attorney general asked Mueller to come back as FBI director, and he said no. And then a few days, they asked him to be the special counsel. Yeah. After he was appointed, fuck, hold on. Let me see if I can. No, if I exit out, I'm gonna crash my Minecraft thing. Hold on. I'm referring to something. I have to find it. What's this at? 2015. Trump. It's like the firing of Comey, I think, is what it's under. Yeah. June 17, 2017, the president called McGahn at, I think that's how you pronounce it, at home, and directed him to call the acting attorney general and say the special counsel had conflicts of interest and must be removed. McGahn did not carry out the decision, however, deciding he would rather resign than trigger what he regarded as a potential Saturday night massacre. Okay, that's what I was referring to. Trump wanted Mueller to be FBI director after Comey, and then he was ash-pained when Mueller turned him down. Remember when they had that spat where Trump claimed Mueller was begging to be FBI director? Actually, I don't. So I'm kind of just taking your word for it. I don't know. I never read that he wanted him to be the FBI director. I just know that after he was appointed special counsel, he was asking McGahn. I don't remember who the fuck this guy is. He was asking this dude to claim that Mueller had special interest and had to be removed as special counsel, because the whole point of a special counsel is to have somebody who's not specially interested.
that, he did some bad things, but you know what? He's a little forgetful. We can't really go ahead. Anyway, what you do is you get an official imprimatur. Biden's off the hook. All right, let's now proceed to get the guy he always set out to get, namely Trump. And what I'm saying is, you're supposed to be like a sophisticated political guy, but you can't see that there is a clear effort here. How do we clean up the crimes of our guy? Because we want to stick the classified document offense only on the other guy, even though our guy did the same thing and arguably worse, certainly for a much longer period of time and much more carelessly, because the documents are sitting not only in his damn garage, but they're sitting at the Penn Biden Center where anybody can wander in and have a look at them. And not only if you look at all the reports,
you'd rather them sit at a public resort in Mar-a-Lago in bathrooms? Is that where you'd rather them sit?
Biden made to Burisma. I'm talking about.
Okay, before we go to
Burisma.
You're saying that the same FBI that supposedly orchestrated January 6th, that worked as a deep state check on Trump's power, even when Trump was in office and was capable of doing all of these grand things, this Attorney General, Merrick Garland, who was totally under the thumb of President Biden, despite the fact that he dragged his feet on all the prosecutions of Trump and waited way too long to appoint Jack Smith, and is one of the #1 center of complaints of every center-left Democrat. You're saying that that same institution's FBI was making it publicly known that they had found documents at Biden's house? Why, if they could suppress, if Merrick Garland could control a special prosecutor, which I don't know if you're aware, but not the whole point of having a special prosecutor is that he's not directly under the thumb of the Attorney General. Otherwise, we would just call that a DOJ prosecutor, right? You're telling me they had so much power to cover this up that they were influencing this 300-page report that her puts out that has a lot of damning testimony, a lot of stuff that makes Biden look bad, but they couldn't just cover up the initial FBI claim?
All right, so notice how this debate has shifted from the factual.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let me just
rhetorical conjecture.
Hold on, this is not what you're doing the rhetoric thing. So everything I've stated thus far relating to Donald Trump's indictments was a pure fact. You are spinning me a tale.
It's a repetition of a charge. It's
of an
not a
indictment.
fact.
Yes, you're
It's a
giving me conspiracy theory.
of an indictment.
You're giving me conspiracy.
Now, let's come back. I'll answer your question. You're like, this
True.
FBI, how is it that they would have... The truth of it is simple. You have a case against Trump. Trump is now going to have 75 attorneys on his side that are going to be looking into who else had classified documents.
Why? That wouldn't help him win his case. That doesn't make sense.
That's one of the ways you defend, is you show that this crime has been widely indulged in by other people and was not seen to be a crime.
No, that's not how you defend against a crime. It
Yes,
doesn't
it is.
work that way.
No.
If that was the case, no one in the United States would get a DUI or traffic ticket ever again, because plenty of people drive drunk and speed and they don't get traffic tickets.
To
The
be
reality is the
fair,
facts that the Mar-a-Lago indictment are unique.
if you were able to show that, I think that's, you could probably count that as evidence towards like vindictive, right? That, you could probably count that as evidence towards like it being a vindictive prosecution, is that like, oh, well, everybody engages in this kind of prosecution and they've never been charged. This isn't something that gets charged. It'd be like the DOJ bringing charges against you for jaywalking, right? So I think that, to be fair, I think that could technically be a defense, but that's not a defense as in I'm not guilty. That's a defense as in like vindictive prosecution. Rosenstein asked Mueller to come back to the FBI director and told him that Trump could get votes in Congress to pass legislation allowing him to come back since he already served 12 years. LOL. I'll look into that. I was doing like a really, really big Russiagate reading sesh, but I had to take a break. I was getting my mind numbed.
Unique to Trump.
No.
They're unique to Trump.
You want to play attorney here? We can pursue the point.
Okay.
It is frequently the case that if somebody can show, in fact, this was part of my own campaign finance violation case, where we basically said Dinesh gave $20,000 of his own money to a college friend who ran for office, and he was $20,000 over the limit. Part of my defense was no American in the entire country's history has ever been prosecuted on a first-time basis for giving that amount of money with no quid pro quo and no benefit to himself, and prosecuted as a felony with an attempt to put him away for years.
No benefit to himself? The most frustrating thing about Dinesh is that he'll give the craziest characterizations and then just hope and pray that nobody knows what the fuck he's talking about. How do you, if you know the New York case, how can you say it was of no benefit to himself? The whole point was falsifying business records in furtherance of a crime, which is election interference, to prevent people from knowing about the affair that you had with a porn star so you can win your election. How is that not of benefit to Donald Trump? Hello? Whatever.
We're going to go with that. You lost that case, though. But you lost that case, so this is an example of the defense not working.
True.
Okay, so in your fluid metric, if I lost the case, I must be guilty. Just like if OJ was acquitted, he must be innocent. But oh no, that wasn't the case. So
I'm just trying to talk about the
I'm
facts
just
of what are
saying
laid out.
you have a fluid
No,
barometer.
it's not fluid. It's very solid.
So according
Read
to
that
you,
book.
because I,
Highly
quote, lost the
recommend it.
case,
Recounting
let me tell you
everything that happened with the Russia investigation by Mueller, 3 most trusted guys in the special counsel's office. Okay. I still have to read the fucking Mueller report itself, but I read like the fucking what the Inspector General report, and then I read the Durham report, and now I read the obstruction part of the Mueller report, but I haven't actually. I was saving the Mueller report for last, but I'll read this after because it seems like this is more so on like procedural stuff than the actual investigation.
I quote lost the case. Here I am, an immigrant. I'm sitting in the offices of the Southern District of New York, and I'm looking at guys, and it's very clear from what they say that they're like, if you don't plead to this case, we're going to charge you with bank fraud. I go, bank fraud? They go, yeah, because you took your money out of the bank. And they go, if you don't plead to this case, we'll charge you with mail fraud. I go, mail fraud? They go, yeah, because you put your check in the mail. These are the kind of people you're dealing with where they take what you did, they re-describe it 7 other ways, they then basically find a way to say to you, look, you want to take your chances with a Clinton appointee judge in a New York courtroom where you're facing years in prison, or are you willing to plead guilty? Now, again, if you live in an imaginary America where you don't think that if they want to get a doctor, they charge them with illegally administering pain medicine, and if they don't want to get somebody, they find something on your tax return. This is something that happens in this country, sadly, every single day. And
When you say that, did you say something?
By the way, his evidence for weaponization is, if you think we don't live in a world where the DOJ is weaponized, and then he just moves on. Thanks, Dinesh. Good argument, big
Hard
dog.
for me to believe that I, a conservative, have to tell you this when the left at one time would have been nodding vigorously and saying, yeah.
Okay, the left is not in the room with us right now. Okay, so just focusing. I mean, like, if we can go through the details of your case. I don't know if you want to do that. I don't think we have to do that right now. But if you're saying, I'm just curious. You said that this is a thing that happens all the time in the United States. This type of lawfare. So then, did it also happen under the 4 years of Trump, and it's happening now under Trump too?
Is what happened in campaign finance?
No. Is he abusing the legal system to go after political opponents that everyone else has done?
It remains to be seen. In my opinion, look.
Wait, so real quick, when Donald Trump
Oh
puts out a
my
Truth Social saying,
God.
Pam Bondi, my attorney general,
Okay.
Not only not only the Truth Social, he signed an executive order directing the Department of Justice to start an investigation into somebody. And people give shit about what Crossfire Hurricane was predicated on. He literally signed an executive order saying, hey, investigate. I think it was Chris Krebs. They provide way more info on that book about how Trump was working to obstruct than the Mueller report. Oh, okay.
to go after these 3 people. I think it was Bolton, Letitia James, and Comey. And I want you to use this prosecutor, illegitimately, she was appointed, and that's why her case was tossed. And Pam Bondi files indictments against 2 of those people with that prosecutor. You're saying that this type of behavior is just part and parcel of being the president or attorney general of the US?
No. I'm not saying that.
Okay, so this is an exceptional behavior that Trump has done that no one else in U.S. history has done before, right?
Let me say what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this. You take a guy and try to put him away for life and fail. That guy is going to be a little pissed.
So you would say that Donald Trump...
Oh my God.
An emotional
I'm
response.
trying to be honest with you guys.
He's justifying it.
We're trying to score like debating points.
I'm not trying to score debating. I'm trying to say factual.
What I'm saying.
Okay.
What I'm saying.
The president was mad. Go ahead.
Try to put yourself in a. Try to have a little imaginative identification with the people we're talking about, right? So here you have Letitia James.
He was super
Making
mad,
a-
guys.
Trump's
He couldn't
way of thinking
handle
anyway.
it. He had to
Utterly
weaponize the
fraudulent
Department of
case in which
Justice.
The bankers came in and said we were not defrauded. We did.
Can't we say that Joe Biden was pissed off that Donald Trump tried to steal the election from him? So he was pissed off enough to weaponize it against Trump in that situation?
Our own evaluations. We made tons of money on this deal. So you have fraud without a victim, and then Letitia James. Well,
He's
New York
describing
was the
malicious
victim.
prosecution? Yeah, of course, because they all support
Okay,
it.
and then evidence comes to light. By the way, not discovered by Trump, reported on in the public media that Letitia James, and by the way, the other people doing this too, tries to take advantage of getting mortgage rate benefits by claiming multiple primary residences. Are you saying for a fact she didn't do that?
Correct. All of that has been tossed.
You're
yes.
saying that Letitia James.
Her and the chair of the Federal Board of Reserves or whatever, where they try to use this weird mortgage claim because it's apparently the only crimes that Donald Trump's familiar with. They don't involve classified documents. Yeah, they fabricated these charges. That's why they were tossed. For these 2 people came out, they weren't true. There was a mismarking on a mortgage form, I think, at the bank about it. But if you look at the actual rate she qualified for, if you look at the actual underlying documentation, it was pretty obvious she wasn't applying for secondary or tertiary residences. It's also principal residences for the purposes of obtaining a low interest rate mortgage. It was all bullshit. Yes.
I don't agree with that at all.
What was I factually wrong about?
Hold on. And
There's no disagreement factually. Okay.
well, there is a disagreement factually, and we can look at the facts of that case if you want. But the point I'm trying to make is this: if somebody who's trying,
I disagree with the facts.
on
Which
real estate
ones? Well, we
fraud
can look at it if you want.
is themselves
Anyway.
engaging in real estate fraud, there's a certain delicious irony in exposing that in retaliation. It's
What
not that you're
a
framing her
loser.
for doing something she didn't do. Let's for a moment grant that she did it. Are you saying that because it's Trump, he doesn't have any right to bring charges against her, even if they're true? And moreover, let's say that they bring the charges back.
No.
And she's found guilty. Will you change your opinion?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would.
Destiny explicitly said it's not because Trump brought it, it's because the charges were bullshit.
You would-
Yeah, of course. But
Just
like,
because they found her guilty, let's just say they
well,
took
I
her
would
to a
look at
court.
the underlying facts, but I would say, and this is where I'll grant to you, I'm definitely sympathetic of the president having these feelings. Maybe, and you can, I don't know, maybe we'll meet in the middle here. Maybe it would be good if we had a independent attorney general who wasn't taking direct orders from the president, especially if we're saying he might be a vindictive man-child, and that person should have the luxury of operating independently, like in every other presidential administration past, instead of taking direct orders from the president, who might, as he just played out an excuse for, do engage in vindictive prosecutions of political opponents.
We now know from the Biden years that all the cases, including the state cases, were being filtered through not the Attorney General's office, but the Biden White House. Why do you think? Hold on.
Source?
It's not true.
It's not true.
I mean, stating it doesn't make
Source
it so.
on
No,
that?
I know, I agree. That's what I'm saying to you. Where's your evidence for any of it? Where's the evidence that her was influenced by Garland? Where's your evidence that her was influenced by
let me ask
Biden?
you
Where's the evidence of Biden giving direction to Merrick Garland? Where's the evidence of NARA or the FBI behaving improperly with regards to the Mar-a-Lago case?
Okay.
Where's the evidence that Jack Smith was told by anybody to do his investigation what he did? There's no evidence for any of this.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
How many times did either Fannie Willis
He's not
or her
giving
lover
evidence, by the way.
show up in Washington, D.C. and meet with the Biden administration? How many times?
It doesn't matter. That doesn't mean it's filtering through the White House.
If okay,
The president isn't allowed to talk to anybody now, or else it counts as improper.
oh, so you're saying
behavior?
it's perfectly fine for them to go to the White House and have a conversation,
Oh
but
my
you know what, they were talking
God.
about a bunch of other stuff unrelated to these prosecutions.
Like when Donald Trump
All right.
calls Putin for
Hold
2
on,
hours
hold
after
on.
kicking out every world leader from the
Let me ask
Oval
you this.
Office.
Let
The
me ask
president
you
is allowed to have conversations with people. If something improper is happening, I would want to know about it, but you would hope that people are reporting on it, or that people have some kind of evidence of it, like we do for all of the improper conversations that Trump has. Like when Giuliani made a phone call to Zelensky's aide, or when Trump made a phone call to Zelensky to threaten to withhold aid, or like when Trump made a phone call to Raffensperger to try to rig the election in Georgia. Or
Jesus
like when
Christ,
That's all-
holy
this is all
crashing.
Bullshit upon bullshit.
Wait, those calls are recorded.
sure
We've
is.
listened to them. We can hear the phone calls.
Okay, so let's start with the Raffensperger call.
Why don't we go to the Mar-a-Lago stuff? Let's just figure
Well,
that out.
we are, but what we're doing with Mar-a-Lago is we're trying to
Did Donald Trump take classified information from the White House?
Yes.
He wasn't supposed to have it at Mar-a-Lago.
maybe.
What do you mean maybe? Was it Mar-a-Lago a skip? Is that a secured classified?
It doesn't matter. The
Then
issue is
it
not
does
that. The issue
that
is
is the issue. You
you
cannot-
just said intentionality, and I'm
Sure,
saying
we haven't gotten into intentionality yet. Are you allowed to have classified material knowingly outside of a secured classified area?
you might under certain circumstances. Yes.
If you want, there are
LOL.
like 10 different statements I can make that Donald Trump himself issued in 2016 about the importance of classified documentation. In fact, Jack Smith quotes all of them, including the
I read
executive
those.
order. Okay, then you
Let
know
me
how
ask you
embarrassing
this.
it is. Well,
Do
no,
you
so I'm
know-
curious. Donald Trump did all the prerequisites needed to break the law. He held the documents where they weren't supposed to be held. He knew they were classified. He said it to multiple people that he was showing them to, and then he told his employees to obstruct investigators when they're trying to find it. This is a crime, assuming it's all true. This should be the easiest. Like, yeah, of course, that would be if that was true, it would be a crime.
It is a little bit of a difficult question when a president takes his own documents from his own administration, an email or a comment that he sent to Kim Jong-un. Is that unauthorized?
Why was there a
Arguably-
special prosecutor for Biden then? Why was her appointed if a president could just do it? Shouldn't Biden have just said, "Oh no, I'm allowed to do that"?
The issue is not whether they did it, because if doing it by itself is illegal, Biden should be in prison right now.
No, it's doing it knowing that you're retaining it outside the classified.
Exactly.
I'm curious, if you're saying it's not a crime, why was there a
And
special
I'm saying,
prosecutor for Biden?
okay, and you cut me off earlier, but I was showing why Biden, I think, took a lot of those documents.
Why was there a special prosecutor for Biden if it wasn't a crime?
The special prosecutor was there to investigate the degree of the offense and whether or not charges should be brought.
But you just said it wasn't a crime. If it's a
I didn't
president.
say it wasn't a crime. I said that it depends on the situation. I said that in a case like this is like a CEO who walks out of a company, takes a bunch of documents with him. His documents that he wrote. Now, hold on. There's a difference because we're talking about classified documents. But
Like, even
nothing-
CEOs can have
Nothing
non-competes.
you're doing is showing me that Trump's conduct here was distinctive in any way.
Okay, can you give me a single example in all of U.S. history of any other president saying to somebody, "Here's a document. I should have declassified it, but I didn't. Don't look too closely."
Okay. Are you saying that if the president said that is by itself evidence that he is guilty?
No, but it's part of the indictment.
Okay. So what I'm saying is part of the indictment. I read it. You read it. Big deal. The point is.
It is a big deal, though.
No,
Donald Trump
my
said it like 15
God.
times when he's talking about other people retaining classified information. Remember how big of a deal you guys made about it when you talked about Hillary's emails for like 3 years?
Yeah, and she was never charged.
Because
Why
she
was
wasn't guilty of retention willfully. Of
Oh,
knowingly
and you
doing
know
it.
that.
That's
How
what
do
the
you know
investigator
that?
said, because Comey said it.
Because Comey said it, right? Okay. So here's what
I'm sorry,
we're
you have
doing.
evidence to the
Investigator,
contrary.
yes.
Ultimately, we are now
No
we're
evidence, okay.
trapped in an appeal to authority.
It's
According
an
to
appeal to
you,
authority.
Comey, Merrick Garland, Biden, unimpeachable sources. Whatever they say should be taken as
No, they
gospel.
are impeachable, but you should have
Jackson-
evidence to impeach them. If you don't agree with what they say, then you should say, "This is why I disagree."
Right, so
Not
what
with
I'm
not with a crazy tale you spin, but like, here's
So,
some contrary evidence. For Mar-a-Lago, we see the pictures of the documents on the stage. We see the pictures of the documents in the bathroom. We see the pictures of the boxes spilled out with the classified marking.
Have you seen the Biden pictures?
I don't know if those were released or not. But the
Really?
contention with the Biden
Okay.
pictures wasn't that
The
there was
Biden
classified
pictures
material.
have been
The
widely
contention.
released. You're supposed to be a factual researcher, but
I'm
clearly
a
your
factual,
eye,
I'm a
clearly
factual
your
researcher.
eye only focuses
Hold on.
right word.
We saw the pictures because that was part of a federal indictment for a crime against Trump. Biden and Pence weren't accused of crimes because they made the phone call to the FBI. They made the phone call to NARA to say, "Hey, we think we have stuff here. You should come and grab it." Do you see the difference between behavior?
The difference between behavior now goes to a separate issue, which is how they reacted to NARA. Okay.
Yes, one
And
showed
the-
criminal
hold on,
intent,
hold
the
on.
other didn't.
And
Yes.
the context of this is really important because we now know there's extensive communications between NARA and the Biden DOJ about how to bring charges over this on Trump. That correspondence has been released. So we actually know that the NARA people, who are supposed to be these archives, neutral guys, librarians, no, they were very much part of a scheme for how do we go and
To get their
Trump,
documents
I can
back?
feel this done in one question that you're not going to answer again. If that was the case, why didn't they just file charges on him day one? Why did NARA give him 8 months to return documents?
Why did what?
Why did NARA give him 8 months to return documents before the FBI finally got the charges basically ready for him to show up to take them because he wasn't returning anything? Why did they give him 8 months to return it?
Right, and I think the reason is simple, and that is when you're dealing with a massive sheaf of documents, a process of negotiation. It's fairly familiar, by the way. Other people have done
Why
it.
would they
You
go
said
through
this was
that
a process of negotiation. You
process?
said this was them talking to
Yes.
the FBI, which they had to because they were like, well, there's a lot of stuff here that we're not getting, and the FBI didn't. NARA doesn't have the authority to go to the president's house and retrieve stuff. That would be part of the FBI. That's why they had the communication. But if their goal, you said that they were talking the whole time like they wanted to fabricate a case, why didn't they just do it on day one? Why did they wait so long?
Thank you.
Well,
Yes.
that's because the normal gap in a communication to bringing charges is about 8 months. That's not unusual at all. If NARA was talking to the
Exactly.
Biden DOJ and going, listen, we need to get Trump. He hasn't returned the documents. Here's a
If they wanted to, if they were doing vindictive prosecutions against Donald Trump, if they were aiming to get Donald Trump, NARA, why would they give him time to return the documents? Why would they negotiate the subpoena with him?
great pretext, go get him. I
A
would
pretext being that he committed a crime?
No,
That's not what pretextual means.
No, a pretext means that we are engaged in this dialogue with the Trump administration. This can now be recast as Trump refusing to return documents.
Because he did refuse. They stopped communicating. That's why when the FBI went to the Mar-a-Lago place, they found more documents. Some of those we still have never gotten back because Trump flew like 12 boxes of stuff up to his home in Bedminster or whatever.
Okay, look, I
we
think
can just say it's bad. If it's true, it's bad.
we can keep going on this, but I think what's look. Let me put it this way. I think you're a little pissed off that your cases didn't work. Right? You were really hoping that
Shut
you
the
could get
fuck
Trump,
up.
prevent him
Oh
from
my
running in
God.
24, put the guy away, and win the
By the
2024
way,
election.
Dinesh
Unfortunately-
D'Souza, the person saying you're a little pissed off your cases didn't work. Your opening was about the 2020 election, big dog. You're mad that your documentary you had to fucking apologize for because it was so dog shit, all right? If anybody's mad that their cases didn't work out, it's Mr. They threw it out on standing, okay? Give me a fucking break.
He was big enough, strong enough, had enough resources, had really good lawyers. He beat you every single time, up and down.
So half his
And
lawyers that he had initially
now
are
you
disbarred
you're
now, so
trying
I don't have to call them
relitigate.
lawyers anymore.
You're
Number one.
basically trying to relitigate in front of this poor bunch of guys and go, you know what? If only I, Steve Barnell, had been litigating this, we'd really have gotten him. But damn it, we had incompetent counsel. It all blew up in our
Well, if
face.
anybody would know anything about
Look,
relitigation, it would be the
let's
conservatives
talk
that
about-
constantly
whatever you
relitigate 2020
Okay,
that
look.
still don't. Do you acknowledge
Thank
that
you.
for instance, Trump lost the 2020 election?
No, he didn't lose.
Okay, so we're talking about relitigation.
Okay.
I mean, like you guys don't even accept the outcome of the 2020 election.
Okay,
We're supposed to be
hold
a beacon on a hill
hold
of democracy.
Hold on. Well, okay,
True.
so we need to probably say a word about 2020 because apparently, just like in the opening books of the Republic where Socrates has to say laughter, is that an argument? We're getting the sort of knowing ha 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 ha, which needs to be confronted because of its sort of sheer sneering dogmatism wedded to a bit of ignorance. So let me ask you this. And did you see my film 2,000 Mules?
I watched the whole thing. Yes.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Oh
Do you
my
dispute
God.
The
The
accuracy
one that he had
of
to
cell phone
apologize
geography?
for.
No.
No. If you were to be convinced that in the 2020 election, in the weeks leading up to it, and then again in the period leading up to the recall election in early Jan, that there were a number of individuals, mules, carrying ballots and going to 10 or more drop boxes, and this could be demonstrated by cell phone geo-tracking, would you agree that this is something that needs to be looked into?
Sure, and you did, and found nothing.
No.
True.
Oh, wow.
Well, okay, that's not accurate to say. You found two people that you accused of engaged in mulership. Both of those people, I think, sued you or the production company, and then that's why the film was no longer for distribution or whatever, because those two
Wow.
people were both engaged in
Okay.
affair. One guy, I think, was a father dropping off ballots for his family, and I think the other was a nurse who was dropping off ballots for the nursing home that he worked at. Both of those stories were verified to be true. I agree, 2,000 Mules was an interesting hypothesis, but it was missing the part two where you actually follow through on the investigation and find the people engaged in muling for ballots. Simply
Okay.
saying that people drove by ballot
Hold
boxes
on,
and not
okay,
not
hold
When
on.
you start doing the little meta comments in the middle of debate, you know you're getting abused. Also, like, Dinesh just isn't familiar, all right? He's not familiar with the game. Doing the little, like, if you want to have, like, a super substantive conversation, Destiny is really good at them, but he's not the best at them. You know, like, he's not, like, I would much rather debate Destiny on, like, the substance of a prosecution as a Republican than I would, like, Pisco, you know? These little, like, when you delve into the meta conversation or, like, the clip farming bullshit, that's where Destiny thrives. Like, you're literally going into his domain by doing all of these, like, cute little comments. Like, why? I think it's just because, like, Dinesh isn't familiar with this game, but, like, you're throwing so hard, dude.
Yeah, first of all, okay, the nurse that you're talking about, I've never heard of. I
Also,
don't even know
to
what
be
you're
clear,
talking
that's not to say that Destiny mishandled this conversation at all. I think he's been doing very well, but, like, like, Dinesh should be, like, the best way to hammer Destiny is being somebody like Rob Noor, who can, like, just get super, super locked into specific details. It's not by doing, like, meta conversations where you refuse to delve into, like, the level 1 details of the specific cases. That's, like, that's Destiny's whole ground.
That's fully made up. That's out of your ass, basically. There is a case where we have in Georgia by one guy who claims, who, by the way, is seen in the film dropping off multiple ballots. The guy says that this was legit, and he was dropping off ballots for his family, which is allowed. This case is being litigated because the facts of it are rather complex, and I won't go into it right here, also partly because it's being disputed.
But you say litigated in a civil manner or a criminal
Hold on.
manner?
But the guy,
Well, can you
despite
say,
the way-
just can you expand on that? In a civil manner or in a criminal manner?
no, it's a lawsuit. It's a civil lawsuit.
Okay, so when you say civil lawsuit, who's suing who for what?
So the alleged mule is suing me and
Okay.
suing the company, claiming that he individually, he's not saying the cell phone geo-tracking is invalid. He's not saying anything shown in the movie is false. He's simply saying what you showed me doing in the film is lawful. And in the film, we show a guy pulling up, jumping out, dropping these ballots, and he's claiming that individual act was lawful. So
Steven did all of his prep on stream, and then Dinesh brings up shit. Yeah, because what's super nice about Destiny is that he does prep. I feel like most people don't even do prep for these kind of conversations. or like aren't willing to press super hard on details because it's like kind of viewed as like a faux pas. That's why Destiny having these conversations with these bigger content creators is super helpful because, well, Dinesh is also a glutton for punishment, but like there's nothing that you could say against this, right? Like it's the same thing for the Ben Shapiro conversation. He was doing anything that he could to actually get away from factual reporting and just go back to like broad narrativization. You could have looked up his stream and seen all the research he did on your criminal case and documentary. True.
That's what's being litigated.
Okay, which is important. That's the whole point, right?
Yeah,
And it could be illegal activity, right?
It could be illegal or it could be legal. That's what's being this is being fought over. But what I'm getting at is no one is disputing the footage in the film. Some of it, you said, there was electronic surveillance. Do you realize that the people who said that this was the most secure election in history never looked at any surveillance in any state? Do you realize that many states which had surveillance turned off their videos before the election so they wouldn't have that surveillance?
That's really strange. Then I feel like Sidney Powell and the Trump admin should have probably chose some of their claims on places that didn't have surveillance because the ones that they did, they intentionally obfuscated the surveillance cameras in order to lie about what they were showing. Like, for instance, the ballot boxes underneath the table.
Look, why don't we just stay
True.
with what... There's a
Okay,
reason,
we can say with your case. In your case, it's been 4 years, and nothing has been resolved about this. It's a
didn't-
case about defamation. It sounds like that's what
I'm
it is.
saying in the
It's
film
not
I
a criminal case
made,
at all.
in the film I made, we didn't talk about boxes under the desk, okay? We relied on two types of evidence, both of which, on the face of it, are valid. First, cell phone geo-tracking, and we showed that there were, in Georgia alone, in Fulton County, in that area, 242 mules, alleged mules, who went to 10 or more drop boxes in the period of the election. Those same people, by the way, did not go to those drop boxes any other time because this was compared against a geo-tracking of an earlier date.
To be clear, real quick, when you say went to those drop boxes, all you have are those people passed by those drop boxes.
No,
That's
no.
it. You don't know what they
Yeah.
did there. You have no footage of them dropping anything
True.
off. You don't know who
Wrong,
these people.
wrong, and wrong again.
Wait, you have footage of those people dropping ballots off at. Also, notice for the one guy that's suing you or your company or whatever, notice that you're talking about footage of him dropping ballots off at a single box. That's not even the claim. 2,000 mules is not 2,000 homing missiles to one box. It's supposed to be people dropping them off at multiple boxes. I didn't see footage of any of that, of a single person. And that would have been the strongest thing. If you could show one person one time visiting multiple ballot boxes, I'd be like, oh, that's pretty crazy. I didn't see a single example of that. Do
Well,
you have a single example of that?
Yeah, I do.
Why didn't you show it?
It actually is shown in the movie. It is shown in the movie. What you really have is you see the same guy in two different outfits at the same box, but on two different occasions, dropping in multiple ballots.
Why would you use geo-tracking data to see a guy going through multiple ballot boxes and only look at his behavior on one ballot box when the central claim was the mule was going to multiple ballot boxes?
I'll tell you why. It's like this. It's like you have a serial killer who goes to 5 different homes, and you find 5 dead bodies in those homes. His cell phone places him at those homes at those exact times of those 5 murders. However, only one of those homes has surveillance. And in that one case, you can look at the cell phone data, you can see when he entered the home, you can then compare it against the
need this
surveillance
guy to
video,
say. Okay.
but you only have one video. Now, in the 2020 election, even in the places that had surveillance, they had surveillance in approximately 1 out of 10 or fewer drop boxes. So the truth of it is, you could have a cell phone moving from Dropbox to Dropbox, but only one of those drop boxes has surveillance.
I would say the analogy
this
is
is all
very-
described. The analogy. This is all.
The analogy is telling me because you're saying there's 5 murders, but you don't even have any proof of malfeasance happening in any of these ballot boxes. Also, when you say there's not surveillance on them, you keep saying that like that's exceptional. Surveillance wouldn't even really tell you anything, right? A guy could show up in a hooded mask with everything covered, and there's nothing illegal about that, and drop a ballot off, and you would know nothing about this person. How would surveillance even help in this case?
Well, it would help to establish that the cell phone, because the problem with the cell phone is my cell phone is moving from box to box to box. If I gave my cell phone to my wife, then she could be going from box to box, but it would be with my cell phone. The advantage of the surveillance, it can establish who is the guy who is showing up at the box. Now, look, here's the problem, okay? When you do cell phone geo-tracking, you get a cell phone ID. But the cell phone ID is not the phone number. And we have no ability, and neither do you, to take a cell phone ID and identify the person associated with that cell phone. The only people who can do that is law enforcement. And so we asked Democratic officials in Georgia, in Arizona, in Milwaukee, in Philadelphia, in Detroit, to look into this. Not surprisingly, the Democrats were like, nah, we're not really interested in doing this. We're like, just talk to the mules. Maybe there is a very plausible explanation. This guy just happens to take a really long walk around election time. He likes to stop at drop boxes. He smokes a cigarette at each drop box, and that explains why he's pausing at these drop boxes. So maybe there is an explanation. We'd like to know what it is. The movie can take you as far as the film can go, but to now demand, why didn't you do the investigation? We're not able to do that, and we said so in the film. So what I'm getting at is, this is not a case where there's nothing here. There is a lot here.
There's literally, how could you even get that information?
Well, the answer is the cell phone data. You just take the cell phone data. You have a list of 2,000 or more cell phone IDs. You just get the actual phone numbers of everybody. You go visit.
No, I'm asking, how would you get the phone numbers? How would you translate this from ID to phone number to person?
That can be done very easily. That's done in every burglary and murder case in the country right now.
The burglaries have something called probable cause of a crime being committed. There's no world where law enforcement could start pulling phone numbers and data from phones off of a wild hunch where no other information is shown. Probable cause meaning that it's likely that a crime has been committed here. There's no world where a judge should be signing off on warrants or subpoenas pulling information like that.
So this is a good question. You're saying that if the prosecutor, let's just say in Fulton County, were to go to a judge and say, we have identified in Fulton County 242 individuals who in the period leading up to the 2020 election or the recall election have been identified as going directly to 10 or more Dropboxes. By the way a cell phone moves is it doesn't move in a fluid pattern. It moves and stops and moves again and stops. You can actually tell when the phone paused. So we're talking about people who are stopping at the Dropbox. And if you go to a judge and say, we need a warrant to be able to identify these people.
Gotta go stream for a little bit. Gotta do a little bit of prep for my debate before I leave. Have a good one. Yeah, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. In my state, Dropboxes are all in high traffic areas, so FedEx worker cell phones would place them at nearly every Dropbox. Yeah, I mean, like, the problem is that it's just a conspiracy, right? So it's non-falsifiable. Like, he's asking you to provide a can you DM me when you get a chance? Yeah, my bad. Yeah, I'll put a new one in the description and I'll DM you. Yeah, it's non-falsifiable, so you're asking to disprove a conspiracy that has no proof, right? like he's not even like alleging anything. He just says, "Oh, well, isn't this weird?" I guess. I mean, provide it to investigators. If they don't want to investigate it, it's because they can't. Like it wouldn't shock me if, like, yeah, FedEx workers or even just like random people. I would guess that they're probably in high traffic areas in places that people stop. That wouldn't shock me, but.
Verify from them that their behavior was lawful. According to you, that warrant would be impossible to obtain because there's no probable cause. Knowing something about the law myself, I would say that warrant would be extremely easy to obtain.
What you described isn't even an illegal activity.
The election fraud is illegal. The question
No, you don't have any evidence of election fraud. You have evidence of people walking near Dropboxes,
right.
which also are near post offices, which also could be people mailing any number of
Yes,
things, right?
thank
Let me
you.
pose the case to you. These 4 kids in Idaho are found dead. And this guy, Koberger, you see his cell phone in the vicinity of the houses, and he makes a big circle around the house, and that's the geo-tracking. He was there at the time, or around the time that crime was committed. Are you saying that a single judge would go, we don't even have any evidence he did it?
No, I think you would have. I think that would be good for probable cause that a crime was committed because we have 4 dead bodies. It's likely a crime committed
That's
there.
right.
We have no evidence of voter fraud from any of these mailing boxes, so there is no
True.
probable cause to speak.
Got
of.
on your server.
Right,
Have a
but
good day.
fine.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Right,
You
but
too.
when an investigation is underway, judges are very willing to give law enforcement the tools to discover if a crime has been committed. I'll give you my own case, a very good example. So, in my own case, somebody tipped off the FBI that I made this contribution. The contribution could have been legal. They
No, it
assigned-
couldn't have been, right?
Why? Why not?
Because it exceeded the federal election commission's.
There are
contribution limits.
actually legal ways to make a contribution. How do you think Soros gives millions of dollars? I just gave the wrong way.
Because Soros doesn't give millions of dollars to candidates or PACs. He gives them to things called super PACs, the hybrid 401 or 403c5s, whatever, C4s, whatever, like the different organizations there, but not to a candidate directly. You give money to another person and tell them to give money to a candidate because you know that you would be bypassing the contribution limit. You're never allowed to do that.
All I'm trying to say is that a tip causes the FBI to assign $100,000 to investigate my case. And this is normal. When law enforcement suspects that there's a crime that's been committed, they haven't proven it, they think it might be.
But there's a crime to speak of there. The exceeding of the campaign contribution limits. What you're talking about, dropping ballots off at a Dropbox
Can
is
you
not
think
a
of a
crime.
good reason for somebody, let alone 242 people, to go to 10 or more Dropboxes?
How many cell phones datas did you go through?
Millions.
So of millions of cell phones, could 243 go by where 10 Dropboxes
Not go by,
are?
go from one Dropbox
Go from
to
one
another
Dropbox to
10
another.
or
Yeah,
more.
sure.
Look, we're not talking about
240. Do you understand the odds that you're talking about here of millions of cell phones where they're post offices or post Dropboxes?
Stream this
Maybe
on
it's because
Shorts.
there are
It's
post
just
offices, right?
my
But I can say
internet and my
millions of cell
computer
phones.
has been super funky, so I just don't trust that. I don't trust that it's going to be able to run well right now. It's a hardware issue.
Dropping off stuff at Dropboxes during an election season? Sure, I guess. That's a very low number of people.
I had to end the TikTok live
There is
stream
no
because of how
reason
fucked up it was.
for anyone to go to 2 Dropboxes.
No reason at all. You've never in your life gone to 2 Dropboxes before.
We're not talking about showing up to City Hall and turning in your ballot. We are talking about these so-called mail-in Dropboxes. Look, even if I were taking the ballots of my family members, am I going to say I'll put one ballot in one box and then drive to the next box and a third box and remember that we're setting a high burden?
Could they just be mailing stuff?
What?
Could they just be dropping off stuff to mail?
You can send in your ballot by the mail.
No, it doesn't have to be a ballot. It could be anything, right?
The mail-in Dropboxes are only for ballots. They're not for anything else. They're not intended for the post mail. You don't put your utility bill in there. These are Dropboxes set up for ballots. And what I'm saying is that it makes sense. All right, maybe by accident you went to 2 boxes, okay? You went to one and put in your ballot. You went to a second and had a smoke. Once you set the bar at 10 Dropboxes, you defy credulity. There's no reason to do that. And that's why in itself, it is suspicious behavior. Now, are you saying that in all the 242 cases, am I saying that all of them were equally guilty of the same type of fraud? I don't know. But I'm saying that there's very good reason to investigate further. And if this were done...
Let's say that I grant all that. Let's say that I say there's very good information to investigate these people for crimes despite having no evidence of crime being committed and no evidence of what these people were doing at the Dropboxes. You don't think that there wasn't very good reason to investigate Donald Trump for committing crimes relating to the retention of classified material when he's showing classified material to people saying I could have declassified it, but I didn't?
I'm not saying that there's no good reason to investigate anything. I'm not saying that.
Also, my understanding of cell phone tracking is that you would just ping off of. So cell towers could be covering miles. Yeah, my guess is that if is he saying that the cell phone tracking is precise enough to tell what station you're at? Because like the Dropboxes are probably going to be near other mailing locations just for like logistics, right? Like the mail trucks are probably going to stop, or whoever is collecting the mail out of these boxes is probably going to, like, the drop boxes are probably going to be pretty near other mail stations or like mailing places. Are you saying that you can like it's so precise and narrow that you can tell exactly which box they're dropping it at? Is that how precise the cell phone tracking is? I don't think so.
I'm not
So
saying
then the investigations of Trump were done for a good reason.
Well, it could have been done. It could have. Generally, when there's an investigation, there is some plausible basis for it.
Sure.
But I think
Like
you
willful
would be,
retention of classified material, yeah.
But I think you would be naive if you're saying, oh, you know what? Had this not been Trump, but let's say had it been Bill Clinton, they would have done exactly the same thing.
Bill
What about
Clinton.
Hillary
You with a
Clinton?
straight, well, I'm saying Bill Clinton because he was the president.
What
I'm
about
simply
Hillary Clinton?
saying
She was running for president. We talked about her emails for years.
talking about her emails is in the public domain is one thing.
The
She-
FBI investigated her email usage.
And what I'm getting at is, okay,
How
if
far
Hillary
are
Clinton
we?
is- I haven't even brought that up. I'm not
Oh
talking
my
about that. If I
God.
were to prosecute
We're
the crime
so
right now,
not
and
deep
I don't know
into
if
this.
If it could be pushed ahead, but the Russia collusion hoax, which began with Hillary, was then cooked up in the Obama White House itself, involved all the top officials of the Obama administration, was executed entirely intentionally.
You know, this whole thing falls apart with a simple question as well. You're not going to
What's
answer.
your simple question?
Yeah.
What is it?
Why wouldn't they publicize the hoax before Trump won the election?
Why wait?
True.
Why, would,
Why did they wait to talk about this until after Trump won the
Yes,
election? Why wouldn't they do it before? Like they did
true.
with Hillary Clinton?
Well, this is.
Like, you know, Hillary probably lost the election because Comey made like 3 announcements. Comey's
Oh
like
my
a blog poster every
God.
day. We
I'm
found a
only
new laptop
laughing.
with more Hillary's emails. But Donald Trump was completely under wraps until after Trump won the election? What a horrible hoax.
Well, the answer is really obvious. I'm only speechless because of the sort of it's so obvious the answer to that question. Hillary was 100% sure she was going to win the election. Hillary had it made. All the odds were in her favor. She was leading it tremendously in the polls. In fact, Frank Luntz just
So?
reflects the popular mood, where on the day of the election, he simply tweets.
If
"Hillary
you're
Clinton will be
weaponizing
next."
it, then why would they feel the need to weaponize against Trump? Why would they? If Hillary Clinton was so far ahead, why did they start this investigation? Like, if they thought that Hillary was such a shoo-in, why would they even start the investigation? Why would they want to weaponize against Trump?
Next president of the United States. She believed it. I would think Trump believed it. Everybody believed it. And when Trump won, these people couldn't believe it, and they were essentially in. So now what?
The investigation started
So, here's
months
what I'm getting at.
before Donald Trump won.
Do I have to explain why they had the meeting in the White House in October as opposed to July? You seem to admit they had the meeting. You seem to admit that all the deep state guys were there. You seem
Oh my
to admit
God, the
that Hillary
deep
cooked up
state.
this false dossier, and this was used for at least 2 years, maybe more, to cripple the presidency of Trump. Is that a crime?
Not true.
So, well, the problem is
Okay.
it's not a crime to investigate things. It was a crime, for instance, when Donald Trump fired Comey to obstruct the investigation into all of the colluding Russian people around him, which was probably criminal in nature. But of course, Donald Trump will never be convicted of any crime now that the Supreme Court has said that the president apparently can't commit crimes. We do know that people were convicted around Trump for things related to colluding with Russian or Russian officials. Manafort was a great example of that. Roger Stone colluded with Lucifer when it came to leaking the hacks about the Hillary email address and all the emails that she supposedly had on her server and everything else. But to talk about this collusion hoax with Obama and the bogus stuff that Tulsi Gabbard has released, all of this stuff had been investigated by our deep state operatives for like a year leading up to the election. Do you agree that Russia was intervening and interfering with all of the media cycles and everything in our country? Do you agree that Russia had companies, the Internet Research Agency was one of which Manafort turned out indictments about, that he was influencing the election in the United States? Do you agree with that or do you disagree with that?
Well, that is not what the Russia collusion hoax was
Well, but do you
about
agree or
at all.
disagree with that? Say
Well, I agree with it in the blasé sense that I think that because the United States is the most important country in the world.
So it was the
Hold on,
largest
hold on.
disinformation campaign in
Hold
all
on.
of foreign interference
Hold on a
history.
second.
Was
We
what
cannot
did
go
in the
through an
United States.
election without the following countries: China, India, Israel, Qatar, Russia.
Sure. Can you give
many
a single
others.
example of China, Israel, or Qatar intervening in our election atmosphere the same way that Russia did?
I would say that the Qatar influence is far greater and far more pernicious.
Give me an
In-
example.
Hold on, I'll give you an example. So in the case of Russia, the attempt was an extremely clumsy attempt to influence social media posts by bots and other.
So it wasn't
Hold on,
clumsy.
hold
They
on,
were literally
why are you
organizing
interrupting
protests
me?
in the
Hold on.
United States, and they had to come
If I-
here. Some of the
I-
largest
True.
GOP accounts,
Hold on.
10_GOP, over 200,000 followers, was ran by Russians.
Qatar, let's look at what Qatar has done. I just read a report that Qatar put $1 billion into Georgetown University, a single institution. Qatar buys political
So?
science departments. Qatar has invested heavily in the U.S. media. If you want to influence an election, you don't think it's better to influence it through massive media outlets that reach tens of millions of people? Yes. So Qatar's influence, I mean, again, if you can seriously contend that Russia was the leading influencer of the election, I think you're extremely naive.
Okay, so then let's say first of all, you have no evidence, but we'll say
No
that I grant you
evidence.
that.
Well, I have the
Let's say that I
evidence of the
disagree with you. So Qatar was influencing U.S. politics. Who was the guy who just got a $400 million jet from Qatar and just agreed to give them a security assurance the same as we went to a NATO ally and is allowing them to train fighter pilots in the United States?
So
It's Donald Trump, if you didn't know.
actually
What did
think-
Biden get from
hold
Qatar?
on.
What did Biden get from Qatar?
You actually think you're
Nothing.
making a good point by leapfrogging from the topic we were discussing, which is, you start out with a claim. Russia was unique in trying to influence the election. I make the obvious point, who's not trying to get a favorable outcome for their country? We know Ukraine was. Why do you think Ukraine
It's
was
not the
so
same. The
involved?
difference is that I'm giving facts. When you
No,
say
no,
other
facts.
countries advocate for themselves, you're allowed to do that. There is a process by which you declare with FARA, the Foreign Agent
FARA,
Registration. You
yes.
declare you are spending money in the United States to do this. Russia did not do that. They used subversive means. So, for instance, Tenet Media was a recent example that was uncovered. The FBI said there were some 100 plus other organizations doing this. And if you read the Manafort indictments, you can see that there were agents operating companies in the United States that were wholly owned by Russia, pretending to be Americans that were organizing protests, organizing rallies,
So
and,
that is-
and,
so
and
that is
advertising
your-
social
so
media.
wait, that
That's
is-
the examples that I've given. That are later in the
So
indictments. Nothing for Qatar or anything else. Yeah.
your case, such as it is against Russia. But you notice that the collusion hoax had nothing to do with Russia per se. It was about Trump. The heart of the case was not that Russia's trying to influence the election. There are all kinds of things you can do against that. You can deploy the CIA. You can charge them under FARA. You can arrest Russians. You can do sanctions. Notice that the Russia collusion hoax, which frankly, many people in this room probably were like, oh, this is exciting. We think we can sink the president this way. It was based on the idea that Trump went along with it.
But he did, didn't he? Didn't
No,
Trump
he
say on TV, if you release the 10,000 emails, Russia, you'll be greatly rewarded?
No.
Wasn't Guccifer a Russian hacker that
Okay,
Roger Stone himself was
hold
working
on.
with to time
So-
releases of Hillary's emails, the most damning stuff from the Podesta stuff?
Okay. What I'm getting at is...
Wasn't there a Trump Tower meeting where first Trump officials and surrogates lied about what the meeting was for, and then later they admitted that, yeah, there was a lawyer lady from Russia, and we were seeing bad information about Hillary Clinton?
Okay. So
you say, okay,
prior
yes,
to the Mueller investigation, all of this recycled garbage was in all the media, and all of you guys were cheering it and hoping it would amount to something. And then Mueller investigates it, and he goes, guess what? There was no collusion.
So that's not what Mueller said. I see you
Okay,
didn't read
no,
the report.
so I'm
Collusion is
saying,
not a legal term.
do
What
you-
Mueller said was
do
there was
you-
probably criminal obstruction
do
that
you-
prevented him from being able to do the investigation.
All right, so
that's what happened.
do you dispute Mueller's conclusion that there was no Russia collusion?
He wasn't there to determine collusion as far as a crime. There's no crime of collusion. Mueller said that he couldn't gather enough evidence to prove that, but he said that there was heavy obstruction that probably would meet the level for criminal obstruction along the way. For instance, why did Trump fire Comey?
Okay, hold on.
Will you
So
answer
here's
that question?
something
You won't, because there's only
very
one
interesting.
answer.
Here's
It
something very
was to obstruct the investigation.
Okay,
That's why
you
he fired
said
Comey.
you said a little bit earlier ago, why would you even need a special counsel to look into something if a crime had not already been committed? You said that. Then you said just now, Mueller said, I don't have enough evidence that the crime was even committed. And yet he had been investigating this for a long duration of time, and he concluded there's nothing there. But evidently there was enough there for him to do the investigation.
What do you think obstruction is? Obstruction is when you make it hard for a person to investigate. That's what the crime of obstruction is. Why do you think Donald Trump fired Comey?
Why did Donald Trump fire Comey? Because, I mean, he's the president. He has every right to fire a...
When we talk about
True.
Democrats, we talk about what's moral and what's right. When we talk about Trump, we talk about what is in the outer perimeter of what is he legally allowed to do. He fired Comey because Comey wouldn't stop the investigation into him.
Comey is an utter sleazeball.
What does that have to do with what we're talking about?
Hold on. Comey was in on the Russia collusion hoax.
Then why did he make public announcements about Hillary's email
hold on.
campaign that probably sunk her entire
Why do
campaign?
you keep changing the topic?
I'm
Let's
not.
stay
I'm
on
just
the
pointing out
topic
how
we're
ridiculous
talking
all of your statements are. None of
We're
them make
talking
sense.
about Comey. Comey is a guy. This is a guy.
Why did Trump fire him?
Pumpkins.
Trump fired him because Trump realized that he was actually part of the hoax.
Do you
That
even
he
know
was
why
part of
Trump? Do you know why Trump stated he publicly fired him? He said it was because of the Hillary email stuff. Trump fired him because after Flynn was indicted, Trump said, "Well, now you guys should be done.
There's
you know,
another
you should be
bogus
done."
indictment.
It was a
Flynn.
good indictment. It was good.
Comey
You should have lied. Don't lie to the FBI about talking to Russian about Russian
Comey
ambassadors.
actually went on TV and boasted that they entrapped Flynn. Comey basically said, we needed to get Flynn, but we normally couldn't get him. Because in the White House, you have to go through the White House counsel. But we knew that things were a little chaotic in the Trump White House in the first term. So what we did is we sent a couple of guys acting like they were not up to anything. They just want to ask him a few questions to clear a few things up. And of course, Flynn thinks these guys are on his side. They're just trying to sort something out. He
That's not
cooperates, and boom,
entrapment.
They go after
Wait
him.
a second. So a couple of police officers acted like they were on your side, and then you lied to them, and they charged you with a crime. This
No,
sounds
no,
like
no,
every
hold on,
JCS video
hold
on YouTube ever. Welcome to the real
Wait a minute,
world.
wait a minute.
This guy's
Thank
a general.
you.
How does he not know how the freaking police work? Seriously?
Look.
Just for the audience, I have to say this responsibly. If you lie to the FBI or if you lie to police officers about things, you could be charged with crimes. It doesn't matter if they're trying to be your friend. They're trying to get you to admit to a lie. That's the whole purpose of law enforcement.
Hold on. Wait a minute. I hate to bring you into the 21st century on this. Hold on. It is actually part of the playbook of the FBI. If they cannot get you on something, they interview you for 10 hours. They then will find something you said in hour 7 that contradicts something that you said in hour 3. And they will say that both things can't be true, and therefore you must have lied. I can give you, I know personally a case of a guy in Los Angeles, movie director, in fact, the guy who made the film Die Hard, where they went after him on this. He was friends with a guy, he had gone to school with a guy who apparently was in the mafia, and they were trying to get this guy, John McTiernan by name, the director, by the way, of Die Hard 1 and 2. They told him, we want you to give up your friend. McTiernan basically said, I'm not doing it. Leave me alone. So what they did was they contacted him under dubious pretext we don't need to go into. We need to ask you some questions about something else. And then they interview him for hours and hours and hours, and they find 2 statements, by the way, not even directly about the case, that, quote, contradicted each other. And they're like, you lied to the government. You lied to the FBI. That's a crime in itself. This poor guy spent, I believe, 2 years in prison for lying to the government. Now,
I have a feeling if you look at the facts of the case, it's not going to be even remotely close to what you've represented them to be.
No,
but also,
that is-
secondly,
they are-
True. He hasn't built any amount of
Why would you
respect
talk to
for
them
his
10 hours?
characterization.
all I'm saying,
Did you need some friends?
All I'm saying, no, you think you're cooperating.
You don't have to. You just say I don't feel like talking to you for 10 hours. I'm fine cooperating with law enforcement. I wouldn't talk to the FBI for 10 hours.
Look, I wouldn't either, but that's only partly because I've become savvy about how all this works.
And Flynn
LOL.
wasn't. He was just a doughy-eyed, innocent person wandering.
No. I mean, Flynn did not think that. Flynn comes in as the national security advisor in a new
The national security advisor who lied about speaking to a foreign Russian person in charge of political events. Why would you lie about that? Don't you think maybe that's probably not a good thing if you're the national security advisor to lie about?
Well, maybe or maybe not. Or it could be. Hold on.
Maybe or
Hold on,
maybe
hold on.
not.
Wait, I mean,
What a weasel.
if you are in the CIA or the NSA or or in the security agencies, you lie a lot. You lie a lot as part of your diplomacy.
Oh my God.
You lie a lot as part of what you're paid to do. It is your job to mislead foreign governments. It is your job to mislead people domestically.
Not domestically.
Hold on.
You don't mislead your
Stop.
own agencies.
Stop.
You're
Stop
lying.
hold on. You're acting. You asked me a question, which is there a reason for Flynn? Let's just say he met with Mr. X, and he is now asked, "Did you meet with Mr. X?" And Flynn could have many good reasons for saying, "No, I didn't." Okay, so did Flynn lie?
Is
Yeah,
this
he
guy
did.
just
Yeah, one
trolling,
reason why we
basically?
should lie to our own FBI about that.
It could be that Flynn is dealing with foreign policy. The FBI comes in. Who knows what they told Flynn? Let's say they told Flynn, "Look, we're just investigating embezzlement inside the White House. We need to ask you a bunch of questions." We don't know what they said to Flynn. That's the key point. They come to Flynn under one pretext, and they're trying. And the key point here is intention. They came to entrap him. That's the beauty of what Comey said.
So what do you think entrapment is? Entrapment is when I ask you a question, you lie?
No. Entrapment is where you basically go to a guy that you have no basis to suspect, right? In other words, they didn't know. They weren't saying that Flynn did anything. They're like, let's see what we can get on Flynn.
So no, entrapment is when you entice or force somebody to commit a crime that they wouldn't have otherwise committed. If a police officer walks up to you and they say, "Hey, do you want to buy some illegal drugs?" and you say, "Yeah, sure," that's not entrapment. If a cop comes up to you and he says, "You better buy this drug or I'm going to beat the shit out of you," or whatever, that would be entrapment. Entrapment is not I ask you questions and you oopsies lie to me about communicating with Russians. That's the national security advisor. Jesus, right? Like that's on you at that point. Sorry.
I think that when the government sets out to entrap one of their own in this way, this is just downright
One of their
Then why is Trump able to do
own.
it with his political opponents despite being so hungry to do so? Or do you agree, for instance, that the Hunter Biden stuff was just outlandish, given that the confidential informant that entire investigation started with, of which Jordan and Gomer, nobody found any good solid information about this, about Hunter Biden engaged in illegal overseas, not reporting from whatever. The entire start of that was a confidential informant who's now admitted to lying completely about the origination of that story.
Okay, leaving aside the confidential originator of the case, do you agree that Hunter Biden and his partners received $83,000 a month from Burisma?
No, that was the reported payments, and that was the reported
You
payments.
don't agree that they got the money?
No, I don't disagree with you. I agree.
Oh, you agree. You agree they got the money. Do you believe that Hunter Biden is a expert on minerals and in the Ukraine?
He might be, he might not be. I think he was a business person. He'd been on boards of other business ventures before.
Not to mention a noted artist. You know, he has done a lot of amazing things. We
He's
know.
more qualified than Witkoff is to talk about Ukraine, and he's currently our ambassador to Putin, and he doesn't even bring his own translator. So Hunter Biden was qualified to sit on the Burisma board, yes.
Yeah.
And if I were to ask you, is there any evidence that he was sat there improperly, you would be able to give me nothing. So let's both
No,
agree
I
that
would
he
be
was
able to give you
qualified.
something.
Oh,
I
okay.
would be able to give you something.
Okay.
I will give you the evidence which is now released of detailed Hunter Biden energy reports, which appear to have been actually lifted from the Biden confidential files. In other words, you said before, Biden didn't even know he had these files. There was no reason for him to have them. Yes, there is a reason. The reason is to cash in on the information, because one of the things that foreign countries want to buy from you is information not available in the public square.
This is
So if you have
conspiracy, by the way.
confidential documents,
No evidence of
why
any
not
of
all
this.
these guys who go into government,
Just
very
wanna be
often when they
clear.
leave, they become consultants.
Wait, Joe
And
Biden
there's-
took
hold
classified
on.
information about his son to sell his own son to foreign operatives?
Joe Biden took
Why wouldn't he have
confidential documents because
sold
he realized that
himself?
They could become the basis for a, quote, insider information that benefited not just Hunter Biden, but James Biden, Frank Biden, and Joe Biden himself. Don't forget about 10% for the big guy.
Which means, okay, so I'm just curious then. So if I were to say Donald Trump does stuff like that, for instance, how he has two of the largest crypto schemes in the world set up right now, where anonymous people can donate to Donald Trump and even be seated to speak with him in the White House, or at Mar-a-Lago, like the event that he did, I guess like a year ago or whatever. Can you show me anything comparable to access to Joe Biden like that, or any evidence whatsoever that he planned to use any of this improperly, or communicated with people improperly, or did anything bad with any of these documents?
Well, we're talking about two different things. You're talking about presidential
asking for evidence.
fundraising.
I agree. We're
I would,
talking about facts,
I
and
would
you're
tell
giving
you.
details. Yeah.
I would tell you.
True.
The way that fundraising works in the United States is very simple. If you tomorrow had a business and you needed something, and you wrote a $10,000 check to your local congressman, that guy will return your phone calls the next day, if not the day after.
Didn't you just argue against this and saying that you
No.
illegally donated money to your friend who was running for Congress up in New York? Are you admitting that that's what you were doing, a quid pro quo?
Shit.
My friend who ran was basically a look. When
Like, I can even make a stronger argument because one of the accusations the prosecutors were making is that your friend introduced you to the person who's the primary funder for one of your documentaries, right?
I wasn't
you have
expecting
this facile
there to
ability to
be
jump leapfrog
witches in
style to
there.
things that have nothing to do with each other.
I can
Shit.
explain the connections if you
My
want. You
friend
just claimed
went
if you want to make financing work in the United States, here's how financing works. But earlier you gave me the exact contrary position of saying just because I'm illegally sending money to a friend running for Congress doesn't mean I'm looking for a quid pro quo. So those are two contradictory positions that I'm trying to understand the contradiction between.
My friend was running a quixotic campaign in New York. She was running because a Dartmouth woman, Kristen Gillibrand, was the sitting senator. And so my friend Wendy Long said, I think I can raise some issues in the campaign. I said, don't run, Wendy. You're going to lose by 40 or 50 points. And she goes, okay, but if I run, will you help me? And I go, well, if you run, I'll try to help you. So this was the basis on which I supported a candidate who had no chance to win, lost by 40 points. I had nothing to get out of it. And so what I'm getting at is we were talking a moment ago about how presidents raise money and are solicitous of people who give them money. And I'm granting that on both parties, this is very common. But that's not the same as Hunter Biden. You jump from Hunter Biden to that. Hunter Biden was basically cashing in big time from a foreign government purporting to supply them with insider.
A funny clip you should look up. There was a billionaire who was frustrated that he couldn't get an audience with the White House despite having the money under Biden. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I did see that. That was super silly.
Information, which is what they were paying for, and we know from his own business partner that money was ending up in the pocket of Joe Biden.
What insider information?
No, we
What?
don't know that,
Insider
by the way.
information. United
That's
You
not
read
true.
all you have to do is read the Hunter
There's
Biden
no-
reports in which he claims, I'm giving you
There's
all
no
this
evidence it was
information,
going
even
to
though
Joe
I don't
Biden,
know
by the
what
way.
this
That's what his
No,
past
not-
was.
He's giving you
Let's see what
information about the U.S. policy and posture vis-a-vis energy, and he's
Yes.
giving you information about various people in the administration.
Nothing insider.
How do you know that?
Because it was never, I don't even know if
He
Palmer or
purports-
Jordan alleged this. It doesn't show up in any reports ever.
Nope.
It was just always these vague stories of insider.
They're not vague stories.
What
All
Why
you
wasn't he
have to
charged with
do-
any crimes at all? Why didn't the House didn't even recommend charges despite the 50 million different subcommittees, special investigations, or whatever they tried to do on him? The facts are frustrating here. I know. I understand. It's a difficult position to be in. There's
The
just,
House-
but the difference is like, so if I look at the
No.
Trump crypto stuff, there's nothing even remotely comparable in all of U.S. history to a president being able to solicit anonymous donations from anybody on the planet,
The
right?
House recognized that to propose criminal prosecution to Joe Biden's own DOJ was a fool's errand. That's why they didn't do it.
But they
And-
did.
and hold
But
on,
they
hold
did.
on.
They literally had him plead guilty to convictions. That has to go through the federal Department of
on.
Justice.
Let me finish.
Because what you just said isn't
If
true.
he didn't do anything wrong,
Wait,
why
how did they
did
get-
Joe
how did they
Biden
get- how did they
pardon him?
convict
And not
him of
only
crimes?
pardon him, Joe Biden was very careful to pardon Hunter Biden for crimes going back to 2014.
Holy shit, is there a
In other
spawner
words,
in here?
He gave him a retroactive pardon, not just for things to do with Burisma, but for any other crimes this guy did, going back to when Joe Biden himself was the vice president.
Why
So
were they able to convict him of some things if they weren't able to recommend any charges? Wasn't Hunter Biden convicted of the gun charge and the IRS charge?
Yes, he was convicted of those things, and
So
I
it seems
think
like they could recommend
and
charges.
I think I've just given you what I think would be a good case to make. Now, why the powers that be decided let's not charge Hunter
Well,
Biden?
just so we can agree.
let's
What you
charge
just said had no basis in reality. They could recommend charges. They did. He pled guilty to those two things. So they always had the ability to recommend charges. Isn't it more
Dude,
likely
I'm
that they,
getting
especially considering
fucking
the origination of the investigation was a
ragdolled
confidential
here.
informant who admitted
No.
to lying about everything, right? And that 10% from the big guy, interestingly enough, we're just citing the Russian leaks from the DCCC.
Absolutely
and
not.
Hillary
We're
Clinton,
citing.
right?
Why
we're
was
citing
there
Joe
a
Biden's own
witch?
business partner.
No.
Yes.
No.
It was Tony Bobulinski who revealed the 10% for the big guy.
No, there's no
God
connection to
fucking
Joe
damn it.
Biden there ever.
Tony's
It's never been made.
True.
Never been made. They had the ability to investigate for years. They
the
found
10%
nothing.
for the big guy, it comes from Hunter Biden. There was a meeting with Joe Biden, Bobulinski, Hunter Biden at the Milano restaurant in Washington, D.C., not very far from here, in Georgetown, in which Joe Biden, who was very careful himself not to get into the business dealings, but he would always show up as if to say, listen, this is on the, I'm involved, I'm supporting my son here, you make the deal with him, the money will then part of it come to me. All of this is laid out. Now, I agree.
They've never,
I think that's what happened.
they've
What did
never
Joe Biden do for
proven
his son?
that it was Joe
What was the quid pro
Biden.
quo
you
here
know?
for alleging that? What even
He
happened?
didn't- this is the style of the Corleone family. What does Joe Biden do for his son? Joe Biden's son is Michael Corleone. He's part of a corrupt family operation. The other brothers are
What did the
involved.
corrupt? What is the
LOL,
operation?
nothing.
The operation is to shake down foreign entities.
Shake down how? Like when
by
Bitcoin goes to
promising
other
them-
countries and signs deals with leaders in Indonesia and Qatar and Ukraine and Russia for mineral deals? What about the $700 million in DoD contracts
let's
that Trump's own children have gotten for extraction deals in Ukraine that the president himself is negotiating?
Okay.
Well, supposedly him, but it's actually Witkoff getting plans passed off from Russians, right? I can show
I mean,
you.
your
if you
only
wanna talk-
mode of defense is the what about, and then you jump to something
Well, no,
else.
my mode of
Why
defense
don't
is the
you- Why
reason.
don't we stay with this?
Okay, wait. If you want to stay
When
with
Joe
the topic, let's
Biden
do it.
did not
Give me
have-
one concrete example of Biden corruption. What was one concrete example? Not like I think this happened and there was a story. What's one concrete example?
Okay.
I just gave you like 5 for Trump.
All right, one concrete example is that Biden is vice president, and right about the time that Biden is designated as the U.S. man for Ukraine, a river of money now begins to flow from Burisma to Hunter Biden and his business partners, and all of this at a time when Burisma itself is under investigation for all kinds of fraud. And Joe Biden goes on camera before an international council and tells you that he demanded that the prosecutor of Burisma be fired. And not only that, he got him fired. And he not only that, he went on to say, I told Ukraine that you're not getting $1 billion if you don't fire this guy.
Why did he say
There's
that?
nothing that Trump has done that comes even close to
Oh,
this.
sure. Well, then why did he say that?
He said that because it's true and he got away with it.
No,
And
why did Biden tell that to Ukraine?
because Biden told that to Ukraine because he was essentially making a
baby.
deal with Burisma in which
don't even
Burisma
know the
said,
official
hold on,
cover story?
Burisma said, you sort out this corruption deal for us right here and we will start paying your son and money will flow right back to you. Nothing good. The timing is perfect. The amount of money is huge.
I actually
and
did
all
get my
that-
shit and
What else was
run.
going on in 2014
Baker,
in
no,
Ukraine?
buddy, nobody.
Don't you think there might have been maybe the whole? I know this is I'm a sucker for buying the official story that the entire European Union and the United
Okay,
States and the whole U.S.
okay.
official administration everything agreed with. The deal was that money was going to be made available to loan to Ukraine if they would clean up the rampant corruption in that country, of which there was a plethora of. We know this because one of the main
Baker,
benefactors of that
you
corruption
can't.
was
I'm sorry,
Manafort, who
buddy.
was working
You
with
can't.
Putin to help his
You
candidate
can't.
in
I
Ukraine
love
that he
you,
was
but you
lying about
can't.
reporting his income to.
All right,
One of
I'm
the
trying to
big
get my
indictments that
stuff
came out, one of the
back.
big convictions and one of the big pardons that Trump made later. But that's unrelated to this, right? In
It's not
2014,
related, and
I know, of course it's not. Nothing is. In 2014, when
And you're
Biden was making these
dodging, you're
statements publicly,
dodging.
I'm just saying what the policy was in the United States. Biden was operating. This was the deal that Ukraine had already made with the U.S. You have to clean up. Show Shokin was known as a bad prosecutor. That investigation you were talking about into Burisma, that was dead for over a year. There was nothing even happening on that front. Ukraine was known to be a country with a lot of corruption and a lot of corruption-related issues, and part of them having access to low interest rate loans from the West, from the United States, was that they would clean up their corrupt businesses or their corrupt lack of ability to conduct themselves as a country. That was the story given. The whole rest of the world agrees. The European Union, the United States, everybody else. Nobody's brought this up until Trump was caught trying to do a good pro quo later with his own personal attorney, Giuliani, making phone calls, and then him making phone calls unilaterally on his own.
So let's repeat your dewy-eyed account of what is actually happening in Ukraine. According to you, there's a lot of corruption in Ukraine. True. Not surprisingly, very involved in the corruption. Burisma. Would you think that a giant energy company in Ukraine is somehow immune from the corruption? They're part of it. Okay. A prosecutor is looking into it. According to you, Joe Biden, having no personal interest in the matter whatsoever, motivated purely by the most sublime ethics, tells Ukraine, you have to fire. There's a corruption all over the country. But I'm only demanding one thing of you. You need to fire this one guy.
Their chief prosecutor.
Who is looking into the chief prosecutor who's looking into corruption from the company that my son is about to make an extremely lucrative financial deal with for 83 grand per month to go on indefinitely. And according to you, it's all on the up and up. No investigations required here, guys.
You know why I know this?
We're all good Democrats here, and when our guys do it, it's all A-okay.
This is the easy killer question that, again, you won't have an answer for. If this was such a horrible, corrupt thing, why is it that Republicans only seem to recall the quote that Joe Biden made on stage in front of the whole world in 2014, years later, when it came up with Donald Trump in Ukraine? Why would Joe Biden go out on stage and admit to the corruption, saying, I told them that if you don't fire Shogun, you're not getting anything from us. Why did nobody say, oh my God, we need to investigate him for corruption? Maybe because the whole world understood how corrupt the Ukrainian system was at that point in time.
The reason people went back to the video is for the simple reason that they, at that point of the video, didn't know about the money flow. So the point is, Joe Biden makes an action which seems on the up and up. It's just that it's part of my job. I'm making sure
it's part of the fire prosecutors in other countries. No, it's not.
It is. First of all, it's a little unusual for the Vice President of the United States to name the chief prosecutor in this country and say...
Very unusual, I agree. So why didn't anybody think anything weird of it? Because this was the policy that the European Union and the West had in guaranteeing loans to help Ukraine. That's why nobody looked into it.
You can think that something is weird without thinking that there's money changing hands. You can think, I don't know why he'd do that. That's really strange. And then a little bit later it comes out, hold on, you actually have checks made out to Hunter Biden's LLCs. You have contracts from Burisma. Now you know, oh my gosh, it all makes sense. This guy was doing it so to open up a spigot of money. Obviously, it's in Burisma's interest to shut down the investigation. What's that worth? $83,000 a month? Yeah. Is our Hunter Biden's expertise worth 83? Hunter Biden wasn't just getting 83. So was Devin Archer. So it's 83 per partner, not 83 total, per month. People don't give that kind of money, especially foreigners don't give that kind of money without having some interest in the matter. They're not.
So what would you say about the $2 billion that Kushner's firm got from the MBS? When Donald Trump was crafting the Abraham Accords, are you saying there must have been a quid pro quo there as well? Or what about the massive Qatari deal with the $500 million jet? Or what about the minerals deal in Ukraine with Russia?
I think we should look at these. So I think with Trump, let me tell you what.
As we move on to this, can we admit for everything else, there's no solid proof of any of the stuff related to Hunter Biden. It's just, the big guy or whatever. There was no solid proof of anything related to Joe Biden or Pence with regards to improper handling of their documents.
Well, all I'm saying is when you say there's no solid proof, all evening you have been reciting these rhetorical, why do you think Trump took a plane from Qatar? There's no solid proof, but you've been saying it. Why did Jared Kushner make this deal? You constantly invoke these
because that's not the standard that Destiny uses. That's the standard that you use.
Kushner was the guy who was the chief architect of the Abraham Accords, and Kushner's firm got $2 billion from MBS from Saudi Arabia. Or Donald Trump allowed Qatar to have a security agreement with the U.S. We don't even have with Israel, and in exchange there was a $400 million jet that was authorized for Donald Trump's, Secret Service and his presidency to have. This isn't a thing. Hunter Biden was never a public office official holder, so there is no I can't draw the president. Now, if Hunter Biden worked in the White House, or if Hunter Biden had the same role that Witkoff had, that Elon Musk has, that any of Trump's children has, then I could say, oh yeah, that is kind of weird and bad. But you guys seem very focused on the hypothetical crimes of Hunter Biden, none of which the House is able to actually indict him on. But you have no concern about the open, rampant corruption that Donald Trump is engaged in, where right now with a crypto coin, he could take donations from anybody around the world and nobody would know about it.
Let's look at the jet from Qatar, because I think if we're looking at corruption, let's look and see what's going on here. So Trump, and this is one of the unique aspects of Trump, I guess, is
being a criminal, president. Yeah.
This is not a criminal act.
I agree. The Supreme Court
Trump operates. Okay. Trump is ultimately a transactional guy who acts as if the United States is his corporation, and he's the CEO. So Trump thinks, the way Trump mind works, if I can get a foreign business to put $500 million into the United States, I'm scoring a big one for my company called the USA. Trump thinks that if I'm making a deal with Qatar, and the Qataris as tribute want to give the United States of America, not Trump, a plane, we'll take your plane. It actually establishes who is paying tribute to whom. And Trump's point is, I can do these deals.
Doesn't it go to the Trump Museum after?
They would have given Qatar $400 million and got nothing out of it.
So if the CEO of your company cut you a deal, your company a deal, where your company now has to do work for Qatar, but the CEO gets to fly around in a $500 million private jet, you feel like the CEO was working for you?
You're saying, yeah, I do.
How does the $400 million jet help Americans?
So the $400 million jet is $400 million less that the United States would have to pay. Air Force One is being refurbished or displaced.
So instead of paying American workers in an American company to make a plane, we got one for free from Qatar, a country that you said is influencing our country via foreign affairs more than almost any other country on the planet.
I think you think you're making gotchas on me, but you're not. Qatar.
I'm just pointing out what you're saying.
The
The
nation,
gotchas are coming from your side.
Let me spell it out.
Okay, go ahead.
The nation of Qatar is extremely cunning. They understand that you've got the radical jihadis over here, and you've got Israel over here. And the Qataris realize that there is a very important middleman role to be played by a broker who has access to the terrorists, but at the same time is willing to make deals with America. And so, for example, if you want to get the hostages out, it's
Shit, I
not easy
didn't
to
bring
deal
a
with
pickaxe.
Hamas. And so Qatar goes, listen, the guys in Hamas, they live in Qatar. We'll talk to them. We'll get some sense out of them. Now, this is the reality of the dirty world we live in. You have to work with these kinds of people. Are they duplicitous? Yes. Do they make promises? Yes. They go, listen, we want to run some joint air exercises with you at one of your military bases, but we are the good Muslims. We preach the Quran, but we don't want to bomb your buildings. And so you need to encourage the good Muslims to undermine the power of the bad Muslims. And so this is Qatar's sales pitch. Why do you think Georgetown took their money? Why do you think they don't? Why do you think they own political science departments around the United States? They have a pitch. Now, what I'm saying with Trump understands what their pitch is. But Trump is operating, I think, as no president that I've seen before him in the transactional world is something he is better at than almost anybody else I've seen in 40 years of American politics. The Biden people were so bad at this that they were giving away everything and getting nothing in return.
Why is it
Nothing.
that Donald Trump is able to create all these crafty deals with people like Qatar? And when you talk about the terrorists and everything else that they were concerned with, they were probably concerned with the fact that Israel had just bombed them. I think that was a major impetus for them securing a peace agreement or a security agreement with the United States, is because they didn't want Israel bombing them anymore, number one. Number two, he has all this ability to negotiate so cleverly and craftily with all of his enemies. Why can't he make the same negotiations with, I don't know, Canada and Mexico?
Well,
He's turned
here's
ally
why.
to enemy of almost every country on the planet of the United
I'll
States.
tell you why. Because what Trump is dealing with is basically 75 years of European freeloading off of America. The Europeans after World War II got an amazing deal, which is basically we, America, will locate hundreds of thousands of troops in Europe to protect against a Soviet invasion. We will guarantee the protection of Europe, and we, the American taxpayer, will pay for it. Meanwhile, you can take all the money that you are spending on defense and use it on your welfare state. This deal has been in place, untouched by Republican or Democratic presidents for 75 years. And every time anybody has questioned it, the president or the president's team has basically said,
Oh
"We
my
have to live
God,
with
I'm
it.
gonna kill
We realize
myself."
We're being ripped off." And by
What
the way,
the
the same is true
fuck?
across the board. It recently came out.
Wait, just focusing on Europe. Just focusing on Europe.
You'll have your turn. It recently came out that, by and large, pharmaceutical drugs all over the world are dramatically cheaper than in the United States. Why? Because all the R&D cost is borne by us, and the companies then sell the product for the actual cost plus a markup. So you might get the same drug for $7 in Canada, and it's $50 in the United States.
Well, at least
because
I know
our
my
citizens
shit's
are
not gonna
suffering all the
respawn
R&D
now
costs.
'cause it's
We didn't even hear about
collected.
this for decades until recently.
Wasn't there a president who was
I can see
black
why
who was
you're
trying to
interrupting
do like a
me.
public option, or was
So
Biden
you
trying to
need to jump in
negotiate
with
like actual
some
cost?
irrelevant.
He's a lie.
Hold on, is it a lie?
Yes, it's a lie. We always have known that drugs cost more in the United States. Why do you think Obama was even trying to pass the Affordable Care Act? We've always known that these things are expensive. Why do you think
Hold
Biden
on,
was trying
wait
to
a
limit it so that Medicare could actually negotiate with drug providers in order to have actual ceilings on prices? We've always known this, but for some reason conservatives are just now catching up to 20 years of like, wow, isn't this kind of a bad thing?
Hold on. You know, as and this is really the story of this debate. Customarily, you shift the ground to you're taking it for granted that the drug should cost $50, and you're saying now, having ripped off the American citizen by making him pay the full R&D freight, let's now give democratically handouts to people so that they can now afford the $50, even though the price shouldn't be $50 in the first place. See, so with Trump, you go to the root of the problem, which is let's sit down these pharmaceutical guys from abroad, let's kick their ass a little, let's tell them, listen guys, you can't pull the scam on me anymore. I know exactly what you're doing. If you want this drug, you don't have to take it. You can let your people die of diabetes or whatever. But if you want this drug, the company will amortize the R&D cost over the price of the drug worldwide. Americans are not going to pay higher prices. Whether we do Obamacare or not is a completely separate issue. But in your usual gymnastic way, you can't answer what I said, so you pretend everybody
What do you think I
already
can't
knows.
answer? What is a question you've asked that you don't think I can answer?
The question I'm raising is this. You started out by asking me, why is Trump so combative and he
With our
can't
allies.
make a deal with Canada? And I'm giving you the answer because those people have been enjoying a rip-off scheme for 75 years.
If all of
across
these other
the
countries have
board.
been enjoying a rip-off scheme of the United States, why are
The
we
European-
outperforming all of them?
He's not fighting with all of them. He's made some
No, why
deals.
are we outperforming all of them? Which European countries benefited so much from their one-sided, lopsided deal with the United States that they're doing so much better than us? Who's outperforming the U.S. right now worldwide? 75 years of
that
extraction.
is what is known as a non sequitur.
I'm sorry, what is the damage? You said that they were all leeching off of us, taking advantage of a state of affairs. How?
They're taking advantage of the state of affairs. Let's just start with Europe, okay? The truth of it is not only does America pay a large portion of European defense costs, but they don't even pay their freight in NATO. They were getting away, by and large, with paying about 1% of their GDP to NATO. Under Trump, they've agreed to raise it to 5%. Now, I can see why they're pissed about that. Nobody wants to pay 5%. They'd rather have that money to spend on buying votes in their own country.
What do they even pay? What are they even paying for? When you say 2%, 5% to NATO,
We're talking NATO is supposed to be funded by a collaborative. It's a collaboration of the United States and the major countries of Europe, and all of them are supposed to pay into the pot that bankrolls NATO. When we're fighting this war in Ukraine, who do you think's paying for all of it?
so
For
it's
the most
investment.
part,
Well,
we-
the United States has been reticent under the Republican leadership, but this is a percentage agreement that they agreed to put into their own military forces. It's not like we get that. It's not like NATO even directly gets that. And Trump is trying to separate himself from the security security provider from Europe
talking
for
about-
the entirety of his presidency. But you keep saying these other countries are taking advantage of us. Has America not gotten in exchange for the security agreement with Europe, the strongest military on the planet, the ability to have so much precision that we can murder random Venezuelans in the ocean and get camera footage of it for Donald Trump and Christine to show off to the American public? Like, we have like the strongest military on the planet. We've had the strongest military on the planet. Everybody's trying to steal military secrets and everything from us, the United States. You're acting like this has been a one-sided deal.
I'm making the point that this is like pure sophistry here.
What did I just say? That was not true. Does America have the strongest military on the planet?
Hold on. Let me
Yes,
zoom
it
into
does.
what we're actually talking about. Okay, you have Europe. You have these countries that face mutual threats from each other. For a long time, they faced a Soviet threat. They face other threats. The United States comes in and basically goes, we will pay the lion's share of your protection. Okay? Now you're asking, don't we get something out of it? Of course we do. But any common sense transactor would know that while we get something out of it, they get a lot out of it. They can afford to pay. They might not have been able to afford to pay in 1946, but they can afford to pay a lot more to their own defense. But they
Haven't we gotten
refuse.
more out of it than
Don't
they've
interrupt
gotten
me.
out of us?
But they refuse to do it because they would rather freeload off the U.S. taxpayer.
You're saying freeload. The United States has gotten to coordinate security on the entire planet almost, on our entire hemisphere as a result of this arrangement. It's benefited us.
Yeah.
We have the strongest economy. We've got the best trade arrangements. We've got the best intellectual property. We've got the world culture that we export from the U.S. It's
This
just
is
so
what
strange.
I call, this is global baloney, okay? Because the issue
Wait, what
this
is pure baloney?
A transactor in any deal, okay? If a transactor in any deal is always going to think about not only what do I get out of it, I obviously going to get something out of it, but if I'm protecting you and your family, let's say, okay, I'm going to get something out of it. We're allies. You're my friend. But then I realize that you're doing pretty well. In fact, you have a more generous welfare state than I do. And you're allowing me to pay your security costs and store your house alarm, put guards outside your house, and you are contributing little or nothing. And then I go, well, I got the best IP, I got the smartest people, I got the biggest... Who cares? It's not a reasonable deal.
They have
And
nothing
Trump-
to do with our welfare. I'm just curious. We redirected, what, $100 billion? Trump said $300 billion. It goes up every time because he's forgetful of less than he said. How much money
What
that
the
we
fuck
didn't
is
give
that?
to Ukraine has now gone into American welfare? Oh, no, wait. The one
The
big beautiful
point- the
bill
point-
tried to cut Medicaid for tax cuts for wealthy people.
The
So
point-
why are we trying to pretend that the Republicans are taking away from security in Europe? You said that he got a 5% commitment from NATO guarantees, that we've done less getting extorted by other countries. Okay, great.
Well,
Where's all my welfare now?
You're as usual pivoting to an unrelated issue. The unrelated issue is what do we do?
I hate
so
to
now,
think.
following our train of thought, if you are able to convince your
I
friend,
need food, first
look,
of all.
you install the alarm. I'll provide a security guard. You pay for your own protection, which benefits you the most. It benefits me. I don't want to see you harmed, but you don't want to see you harmed even more. So you pay. Now I have some more money. And when I say some more money, what I mean is that even after the Cold War, if the United States had said, we are in a different world, the Soviet threat is over, we're not going to have German
So
battalions
kills me
coming through
that
the
the
Volga
topic
Gap
is we
and
live in
swarming across
different
Europe.
realities.
We're in a different
True.
situation. Our defense budget can now probably be cut in half, or in a third, to a third. And if we did that, we now have a lot of opportunities, which governments are not very wise in the way they spend money, but we can deploy them any which way we want, which is a separate debate. But the country would have enormous added resources. Just look at how much we've spent on the defense of Europe since World War II. It's a giant number. Now, what have we gotten for it? Have we averted any great wars?
Oh,
Yeah,
those
we
are
go in the-
wither
any great
skeletons.
wars?
That's what they are.
From them via our institutions because of how easy it is for them to come and study here. We have foreign investment from these countries. These
You
people
don't
invest
think-
a ton in U.S. treasuries because
You
of all
don't
of the
think
extra trade that we do.
Oh yeah. So the Europeans take our money and invest it in our treasuries so that they can then collect interest on that, and that's how we have a $38 trillion debt. And you think it's a wonderful arrangement in which we give them money to then loan to us, so we can then pay them the interest on that and go into the red to $38 trillion.
I'm sorry, as opposed to, what do you call
Shit.
them? When somebody comes up to you and they say,
These
oh, what's
fucking
your net worth?
fire
well,
aspect
I have $10 in my
motherfuckers.
bank account. And then another guy, you're like, oh, what's your net worth? What do you do? It's like, oh, I've got like a $50 million loan out. Do you think the guy with the $50 million loan is the poor one in that circumstance? The reason why we have a $38 trillion debt and the reason why our interest rates are still relatively low despite having so much debt is because so many other people want to invest in the U.S. economy. Our workers get paid more across basically every single sector. Everybody wants to come to this country to live. Like South Africa isn't begging, Germany or Britain to limit. If you want like surplus export economies, you can look at places like that, like Iran, or places like North Korea, or places like the United Kingdom is an export economy right now. Like, I mean, these are not favorable places to live comparatively speaking to the standard of living of the United States.
What you say is not untrue, but it's not the reason that our interest rates are low. Look, people, Europe. First of all, with regard to Europeans coming to study in America, are you saying that Europeans would not come to study in America from the 40s to now, even though the United States is leading in technology? We have very good reasons for the Europeans to come study here.
Not when the current administration is supporting them for protesting against
now he
Israel.
switches to something else.
I'm not. It's,
You
the
are,
Trump administration,
you are.
you talk about students
Okay,
coming to the United States
let me-
to study,
let me
and the
stay-
president is attacking all of our universities and making it harder to get student visas.
I try
I'm
to-
saying no, they wouldn't come.
You're a hit and run man, because whenever I try to stay on a
I mean,
point,
hit and stay, man.
you
I'm
will,
staying
you
on
will
the same
flip to
point.
something
Not
completely
flipping
different.
at all.
and
We're on
make-
the same point.
And make same point. You said interest rates are low because Europeans invest a lot of money in the United States and hold a lot of our treasuries. And,
Oh
and I
my
think
God.
that is not even close to the seventh most important reason why interest rates are low. The real reason interest rates are low is far more insidious. And that is our government is constantly printing oceans of money. They have the ability to print money and dilute the money that is in your pocket. So you work hard to earn money. Your own government, as we speak, is printing money. When I came to the United States, I had $500 in my pocket, 1980. If I
Is that
had
a
saved that
pumpkin?
money,
Wait,
spent
hold
it
on.
through great frugality, and if I had it
Oh,
now,
fuck, I
the
need
purchasing
that.
power of that same $500 today would be approximately $50. In other words, We save money and we practice deferred gratification.
I wonder
And
if
the one
I could
thing we
just
want
dig
is for
under.
our money to hold its value. We would rather it go up in value because we worked so hard to get it. But our government, our own government, screws us by
This feels cheap,
diluting our
but-
money because when they print money, they get to spend it,
Hi,
and the
Baker.
money in all of our pockets goes down.
So,
So
selling
by-
treasuries is not printing money. Quantitative easing or other things. There are different factors that you can talk about when it comes to monetary policy. But the reason why our interest rates are low is because a lot of people want to buy U.S. treasuries. So we can sell our debt at a very low interest. If not many people wanted to buy it, then we would raise the interest on our debt. Printing money and saying that that's magically making interest rates low doesn't make sense. It's not connected.
This is called. Oh, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, the interest rate is the price of money, right? How difficult it is to get money is what sets the interest rate. Now, let's just assume as a thought experiment that I right now double the amount of money in circulation. Will the interest rate go up or down? Down, because the supply of money is vastly greater. Just go back to Economics 101.
Economics 101. If you were a German citizen and you wanted to buy a U.S. Treasury bond and it was paying 5% was the coupon rate on it, if you knew that the U.S. was going to double their money supply, why would you buy that Treasury bond for
Because,
a lower
I'll
interest rate?
answer
You would
your-
demand a higher interest rate on it.
You would. The reason you would buy that treasury bond is because the German Bundesbank is tripling the amount of its own money. In other words, they're printing money too, and the United States is an abuser of the money supply, but not as big an abuser as other countries.
Okay,
Why-
then
hold on,
how are these countries that
now
are
that
taking
I'm
advantage of us don't have to abuse? Shouldn't they be abusing the money supply less? They're taking advantage of us so much. Like
The
everything you
reason
say,
that they're
like-
look, why was there runaway inflation of 15% per month in Argentina, and why do these interest rates and inflation rates vary so much around the world? There's more than one reason, but the primary reason is money printing, and you can see why it's very attractive for governments to print money. Here's why: if they didn't print money, let's just say we outlawed it, the U.S. government every time they spent money would have to come to you, the taxpayer, and tell you we're going to extract more $20 bills out of your wallet, and you would be like, no. If you try to do that, I'll vote against you.
Even if you don't print money, you can
the
still
government
sell
has come up
treasury
with a
bonds.
beautiful scheme. Let's not consult the citizens. Let's just steal from them by secretly removing $20 bills out of their pocket, and we do this by running this thing called the money printer.
If this
you
was
know
so
it's true.
bad for the
You have to
economy,
pretend it's not
if they-
true. But
okay,
it is
sure.
true.
Well, let's say it's so horrible. Why does every single country on the planet have central banking?
Because central governments love money cartels. What could be better for the governments of the world than to have a cartel in which they control the money supply?
So all of these governments all over the planet are engaged in this anti-democratic behavior. No citizens actually want this, and no individual country has figured out that if we don't do this, we'll be better than every other country. Wouldn't it be a lot simpler to think maybe they engage in central banking practices because that's just a better way to run an economy?
No. This shows a colossal level of naivete. But let me put it this way: the ordinary person thinks that our whole system, including our banking system, works completely differently than it does. So I asked my wife the other day, if you put $1,000 in the bank, what happens to it? She goes, well, it's in the bank. And I go, so if you want to get it anytime, you can just go to the bank and ask for it, and they'll give you $1,000, right? And she goes, yeah, right. And I go, what if I told you that when you put the $1,000 in the bank,
It's like
the
right
bank
there.
takes $1,000, they pluck out 1/10 of it, roughly, about $100, and they lend $900 to another guy, let's say Steve right here. But they don't actually give him the money either. They open up a checking account for $900 in his name. So now you have two guys who both think that they've got the same $900 in the bank, but it doesn't even end there. Let's say that Steve has a deposit in another bank. He goes to the other bank, let's call it Wells Fargo. He deposits his $900. What does that bank do? They take the $900, set aside $90, and loan $810 to another guy, or open up a checking account in his name. What I'm getting at is, whose $1,000 is it? And the answer is the bank, by a cartel arrangement allowed by the Federal Reserve. This would be fraud in any other area.
So it
Like,
wouldn't
hold
be
on.
fraud. What you're explaining is called fractional reserve
It's-
banking, and
yes,
it's what
and
every country on the
fractional-
planet does. But then when your wife says, "Can I get that $1,000?" Would you tell her no?
No, I would tell her yes, I would tell her, because even though the money is fictional, it has already been lent out. If you go to
How
the
am I
bank,
getting
let's just say
hit?
all of us tomorrow decide to go to the bank and collect our money, and the bank didn't have it. What would they do? Answer: phone call to the Federal Reserve. Print the money. So the backstop of all of this is the unlimited ability of the federal government to prevent bank runs of the kind that occurred in the Depression.
Correct. That's why
by
some things
running
are called FDIC insured. So like a savings account would be an FDIC insured product by the bank. Wouldn't it be better for that $1,000 deposited in the bank instead of just rotting there collecting dust to be mobilized in the economy so that people could actually do something with it, like have a mortgage for a house or invest in a business or do literally anything else besides sit there as termite food?
Okay, so I don't think we need to go to this because you don't even know what you're talking about.
What did I
The
just say
Federal
was wrong?
Reserve-
What
the
did I just
Federal-
say? Explain to me the velocity of money. Explain to me why it's not good to have money sitting in a bank doing nothing than it is for it to be mobilized in an economy. Tell me.
Okay. No, we're not disagreeing about mobilizing the money. We're disagreeing about the mechanism of doing it and who is left holding the bag. So in the 19th century, we had no Fed. The United States became the largest economy in the world. In the 19th
Shit,
century,
that's
we had
not what I meant to
fractional
do.
banking. But if banks couldn't meet their obligations, they went bankrupt. And so there was free market competition among the banks. It was to prevent that free market competition that the Fed was set up. Essentially, what the Fed decided to do is
What the year is 2025, and you want to emulate the banking system we had when there were cowboys and Indians, when in the 19th, 18th century.
are
How far
talking
back do you want to go? We live in a modern world that has modern demands for our monetary system. Why does no other country on the planet employ the obviously superior form of banking that you're talking about?
because it is in the interest of every state has recognized for thousands of years that controlling the money supply is the key to controlling the wealth of the country. That is what, in the era of gold, what the governments used to do is take the gold coin and dilute the coin. put base metal into the coin. So the coin, which was supposed to be pure gold, is now only 50% gold or 30% gold. So this racket has been going on for a long time.
So do you think Trump should get rid of FDIC insurance and fractional reserve banking?
FDI insurance is a complete illusion.
So we should get rid of it and go back to the gold standard?
Not the gold standard per se, but we should go back to a free banking system, which would include Bitcoin, which would include all kinds of currencies.
We're talking about fake money and you support Bitcoin?
Bitcoin is not fake money.
Okay.
You think that something is fake money because, first of all, you give this rhapsody to modern technology, and when finally a form of money is created privately that cannot be inflated, that has a fixed supply, and that in fact has...
It cannot be inflated. Bitcoin has one of the wildest volatility indexes of any currency on the planet, besides maybe Zimbabwe.
Do you realize that inflating a currency and volatility have nothing to do with each other? Volatility has to do with the market's appraisal of a new product. There is extreme volatility around all the internet companies for about 20 years.
I
There's
forgot
Volatility
that.
around Bitcoin? You don't
There's
think
a lot of volatility around Bitcoin because the market is full of people who look at this thing, don't understand it, and go, "What's this? I've never had private money. To me, a dollar bill needs to be said. It needs to stay on the bill, backed up with the full faith of the U.S. government. Otherwise, it's not money." So this is an ancient way to think, and something like Bitcoin confuses you because it's new. But
so to be clear, it doesn't confuse me. It just doesn't. It makes it so a country loses complete and total control of their monetary
exactly,
system.
and that's why you oppose it, because you are a statist and you want your government to
No, I
control
oppose
the
it because
money
I took
supply.
econ in high school, and I realized that there's a value to a country being able to control their currency.
What is that value?
Well, in times of great economic depression, sometimes it's nice to be able to inflate your currency a little more because that's a preferential state of affairs than half the country going unemployed, or like we did during the Great Depression. Or other times, it might be nice to pull back on your currency if you want to deflate a market that might be running a little bit too hot, like the run up to the 2008 housing
Okay,
crisis.
so I reject this whole...
and you stand in
this
opposition
whole-
to central banking across the entire
No,
planet.
this is a whole Keynesian understanding that is itself has all these embedded false assumptions. The false assumptions are that you've got this thing called, quote, the money supply. That the money supply is kind of like a something that can be regulated with a faucet. You turn it up, you turn it down. This was Keynes' justification in the 1930s for an unlimited welfare state. Keynes was very explicit about his motives. He's very explicit about what he was trying to do. Frankly, he was not even an economist. But nevertheless, he advanced this theory, which has been regurgitated to economic students for almost a century now. All I'm saying is that money is valid. No money has intrinsic value. The $20 bill has no intrinsic value either. So if you say Bitcoin doesn't have intrinsic value, neither does a $20 bill. By the way, neither does gold if you don't count earrings and ornaments.
To be clear,
money,
the dollar has value because the U.S. government accepts it as payment for taxes. Nobody has to accept Bitcoin as payment.
exactly. So what do I
Shit.
take my Bitcoin, I change it to US dollars, and I pay my taxes.
If somebody's willing to buy it from you, yes. But you can't pay your U.S. taxes or U.S. debt
Right.
obligations in Bitcoin.
So
Dinesh and Stephen, we do have about 15 minutes left, just so you guys know. And I thought
Actually,
maybe we
this is
should touch
kinda
on
fine.
Trump and political violence, if you feel like it.
well, we actually haven't talked about the topic of our debate, which I took to be whether Trump on net is a good thing or a bad thing for America. And so I'd like to say a word about why I think a little bit about Trump, the man, and a little bit about what I think he's done for the country, and then maybe you can say the same, and we can kind of get to the heart of what we're talking about. So to me, Trump's first term was very positive for the most part, but kind of blasé. He was stopped in his tracks by 2 years of Russia collusion hopes, but he got a lot of things done, and the economy was in better shape, manifestly pre-COVID, in March of 2020, leading up to the election. Quite frankly, had it not been for COVID, I don't even think election fraud could have helped Joe Biden. But Trump was hit by this, was sideswiped by COVID. But, and that's a fact, Jane Fonda basically said COVID is God's gift to the left. So if you can't see the truth of that, I don't know what to say to you. The years of Biden were essentially the years of taking the American bus and driving it straight to the cliff. In foreign policy, with the Afghan disgrace, in domestic policy, inflation goes to the highest level that it was going. You have to go back to the 70s, to the OPEC era, to find inflation rates of 9%. Biden achieved that. And an open, porous border, which is actually inviting, not only inviting, helping caravans of people coming from thousands of miles away, no vetting, doesn't matter if you're a criminal. There were foreign governments that emptied the jails and boasted about it. And all these thugs, criminals, bad guys, terrorists are now in this country. I think if we had kept going in this way, it's hard to see how the country would survive a whole lot more of this. So Trump's great achievement was to come in and stop this dead in its tracks. The border is secure. You probably not only heard, but some of you may have bought into all the embellishment, all the rhetorical ballet. We need comprehensive immigration reform. There's no other way to secure the border. You heard all of this. You might have said it yourself. It's untrue. And Trump just proved it to be untrue by just showing you can't get in.
Oh my
However, we
God.
have somewhere
Okay,
between
I
8,
think that's
maybe 10
everything.
million illegals who are already here. What do you do with them? Trump is doing the most humane thing he could do. If it were me, I would ask all 8 to 10 million to leave. I recognize that certain things are a fait accompli. You might have Americans who came 20 years ago and they've got kids here, they're embedded in our society. I'm willing to be prudent about the issue in some ways, but I don't see any reason why people who essentially came across the border in the last 4 years under Biden as part of a cynical scheme to create future Democratic voters, why those people should not be asked to leave now. So I would
God
go much
damn
further
it,
than Trump
okay.
and try to get these people to self-deport.
I'm cutting my
If they would
losses
not
here.
deport, I would try to think of sensible, pragmatic ways to get them out. But they have broken the law, and they need to pay a price for it. Now, on the foreign policy front, Trump's view is really simple. I'm not going to get involved in expensive foreign wars, but there are many bad guys in the world, and I will not hesitate to pulverize them. This applies to Soleimani. It applies to Baghdadi. If I have one criticism of Trump, I think he didn't go far enough with Iran. I think that Israel was pretty close to toppling the Iranian regime. That would have been excellent regime change. Many people who think regime change doesn't work don't realize that you're operating off basically two examples, Iraq and maybe Afghanistan, where it actually worked for a while, but was handled very badly in the overall. But regime change, if you look at the examples of the last 100 years, has mostly worked and worked for the better. And I think it would work for the better in Venezuela. I think it would work for the better in Iran. And I think Trump stopped it in Iran, which I oppose. I think he is trying to get rid of Maduro in Venezuela. My wife is Venezuelan. Pretty much any living Venezuelan who's outside of Venezuela will tell you they fled the country. Maduro is a one-party dictator. The reason Maduro loves Democrats is because he sees them as his allies.
By the way. I
The
was just
question
trying to
of
get my shit
displacement
back,
under Biden never even
but
arose.
slay.
But I think his days are numbered, as Trump says. Trump will probably get him out. And then you look at the economic front, and Trump is doing two things. One is he is creating a kind of he's essentially unleashing American energy. American energy, the United States, as it turns out, has giant energy resources, probably more than enough for the next 100 years. Our main obstacle is we just don't go get it. And all kinds of reasons, environmental reasons, obviously people who are in the business have reasons to block it. Trump's point is, why don't we unleash energy? And so if we unleash energy, we unleash AI, we unleash robotics. We are looking at a potential era of abundance. By the way, Bitcoin is a big part of that. So Trump is turning the levers of creating massive abundance in the United States. It may even be that some of our problems like the debt can be washed away in this abundance. You don't have to scrounge on Social Security. You don't have to screw the Gen Zs or screw the boomers. We will actually have the wealth to do this. Do you know that the Biden people were basically blocking AI under the pretext that we'll only allow it if we control it? This is what the Biden people were telling the high-tech guys. We'll only play ball with you if you basically turn over the levers to us. Otherwise, we're not going to allow it. So what we're seeing under Trump, I think, is something that's quite epical. It might take us years to be able to look and see what was unleashed. It's kind of like in the 1980s.
How did he hit
under
me?
Reagan, we could see something big was happening. Microsoft was starting. I ran into a conference. There was Michael Dell. The tech revolution was getting going. And it's done a lot for the world. So my case for Trump is that this guy, being transactional, actually understands very well how the world works, is not unwilling to use U.S. muscle.
I hate that it's rude to interrupt.
Or in the leverage of foreign policy power. And the best that his critics have are these kind of whiny, let's go back to the Mar-a-Lago case and look at it in excruciating detail because we really could have gotten him then.
LOL.
This is a pathetic way to go after a guy.
Okay, let's go back. Let's go back from the last thing you mentioned to the first. So, what is Trump trying to do with tariffs?
God damn
what
it!
Trump is trying to do with
No.
tariffs is this: the United States sells stuff abroad, and other countries, India, Australia, many others, place giant tariffs on those products. Sometimes
What is Trump trying to do with the tariffs?
Trump is trying to do two things. One is he's trying to use the tariffs
Fuck
as
it.
a
I don't
form
care. I don't
of
care.
strong arming or arm wrestling, basically saying I will put tariffs on you and I will only take them off if you take off yours.
Then why does he keep changing them to countries like China?
Okay, so be
I loved
aware
your
that
good
this
faith
is
debate
actually-
with that one lady. I feel like other liberals wouldn't have handled that well. I appreciate it. Okay, I need to lock my ass in. Okay, where am I going here? Where am I going here? Give me 1 second. I will engage more directly in a moment. Okay. Yeah, I actually pretty enjoyed that conversation. Yeah, I don't know. I felt like I was kind of in a special mood on that. There was a billion scenarios where I had that conversation and one of them turned out all right. Also, I super haven't been listening to Dinesh. I mean, like, there's no value in anything that he's been saying anyway, but I super haven't been listening. I will not lie. Because I was getting absolutely ass pounded by those skeletons.
not even been seriously attempted before.
Because
Our
it's illegal.
governments were perfect.
It's illegal.
It's not illegal.
The president can't. Do you think the president of the United States is allowed to do unilateral econ policy
The president of the United States has a lot of economic levers that he can use.
in times of national crises?
Exactly.
Our debt is
And-
not a
and-
national crisis. If it was, Trump would be even worse for it. But
Well,
so we have no
well,
trade deals.
I think
we have no trade deals.
I
The
think
tariffs
that
have been a
$38
disaster so
trillion
far.
of debt. I think that a stagnating economy. I think that a
Then why
working,
did you say that the first Trump term was a good one? He added
The-
to the
the-
debt more than he needed to, right?
he added to the debt, which you'd have to put into the negative column. I mean, all presidents have added to the debt. Just look at the essentially one out of every, I think, $4 in the country today was generated starting in 2020.
Sure, Trump is
under
continuing
Trump.
to add to it even more.
Yes,
right?
Trump
Trump
is a-
won't have a single budget surplus by the end of his presidential
Trump
term, right?
is, look, you should be happy with him for this. Trump is, in fact,
No, he won't have a budget surplus by
Trump
the end
is
of
a
his
big
four-year term,
spender
right?
when it
Yeah.
comes to spending money. He's more like a Democrat in that regard.
Well, no, because Republicans have been the big spenders, right? Isn't a Democrat the last one with a budget surplus? Clinton?
Well,
Can we not agree on basic facts here?
Clinton was,
Right?
come on.
Wasn't Bush the Republican the one that started all of the foreign wars?
The Clinton surplus was 100% the result of a peace dividend created by the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Surplus is a
which occurred
surplus.
A surplus is a surplus, but
Okay.
this
I
is
thought
like,
Donald Trump used to collapse the Soviet Union. Doesn't Donald Trump have like 9 country wars that he's ended? So we should have tons of surplus then, right? Do you agree? You acknowledge that by the end of Trump's 4 years, we will not be at a budget surplus, right?
I agree.
Okay, so then that's how the debt
and
point
you're
is
missing the
worthless.
argument I made.
You just said he might solve the $30 trillion of debt, and now you're saying it's not going to take away from the budget deficit.
Well, you weren't listening to me. What I was saying was one way to solve the debt is to start paying it off. That's a very painful way when you consider that not only the vast majority of our budget is currently in entitlements, but those entitlements are scheduled to increase dramatically. So this is a painful way to do it. You can see why our congressmen and senators in both parties don't want to do that.
Well, but the
Hold
person
on,
who hurt paying it off the most was Trump with the tax cuts, and they did it this year when they solidified the tax cuts, didn't they?
The very best way to pay off the debt is to enlarge the economic pie.
Which he's shrinking more than he should be. It should be growing faster, but the tariffs have hurt
And
it.
what I was
But, like,
saying,
why did they
True.
solidify the tax cuts?
I was saying that the combined effect, in my opinion, of energy unleashing, AI, and robotics, the United States has been growing at a rate of somewhere around 1 to 2% for now decades. It was growing at 3 to 4% in the middle of the last century. If we can create growth rates of 5, 6, 9%, which are entirely in the realm of possibility,
Not when you hurt your
given
trade relationship with every other country on the planet like we've done with the tariffs. You acknowledge, for instance, when Trump held up the tariff sign, that all those numbers were a lie, right? None of those tariffs were accurate for any other country, right?
Look,
Can you at least acknowledge
I
that
think
simple,
that
basic fact that all the numbers on that chart were a lie? They used a math formula.
What is
that
not a
calculates
lie?
our
What is
trade
not a
deficit.
lie?
So was that a lie, though?
What is not a
Wasn't
lie?
that a lie?
What is not a
Wasn't
lie?
that a lie, though? When he held up the sign, didn't he lie to the American public, to you and me and everybody else in here, and the entire world, when he said, these are the tariffs that every other country has on us? That was a lie, right?
It was a negotiating tactic.
So it was a lie to
LOL.
negotiate.
It was a negotiating tactic. Look,
But it was a lie then. We can at least, it was a lie to negotiate. It was a lie, right?
Trump
Who was he
is-
negotiating with? The Fox News ratings?
No.
His YouTube views? It was a lie.
Are you saying that if
I'm saying it was a lie. I'm saying those numbers were a lie.
I'm saying
Which
if,
they were.
if I'm negotiating with you,
Yeah, and you lied to me. I wouldn't negotiate with
I'm
you. But
not
those numbers were a
lying
lie, right?
if I'm negotiating with
I
you, and
love that
NPR
Destiny's
reporter
holding
comes
him
me
to this,
and
yes or
asks me
no.
something, and I say this is going to be the result, I'm actually speaking to you, but if I were to tell the NPR, oh, guess what? Let me give you my actual negotiating position, okay? Because you can then put it on NPR, and the Chinese will figure it out by tomorrow morning. This is
I think I would probably use the massive governmental apparatus I have to negotiate to do that, because that seems like a more
no, because
appropriate
the
and
massive
mature
governmental
way to do
apparatus that we
negotiations.
have is proven
True.
to be completely and utterly
Gotcha.
incompetent.
So then everything that comes from the Trump administration, I should interpret as being potentially fallacious. It could all be a lie because he's trying to negotiate with other people. Then I can't
I'm saying negotiation is a moving ball. I'm saying that Trump is very capable of putting on a tariff and saying, I'm going to put on this tariff on January 7th, and then he doesn't do it. Is he lying? No, he's not lying.
No, that's
he's
not what we're talking about.
threatening to do it.
Well, he did do it,
gets
number one.
something for it.
The big chart was a lie. Why can't we just admit that? This is what I'm talking about at the very beginning
I'm
of this
saying
conversation. Looking at the realities. It was a lie.
I'm saying that these bombastic claims
Were lies.
in the course of negotiation, it doesn't even matter because the real
LOL.
issue is what are you getting in the deal?
If I don't know if you saw me walk up on
Okay.
stage, but if I put in my Tinder profile that I'm 6'2",
Okay.
and I show up at my date with really good posture, does that count as just being bombastic, or would that be a
All
lie?
right, let me give you an example for why.
Well, let's have an example. How about when the president held up a
If
board
you
with a
were
bunch of
to
tariff
ask Trump-
numbers, and they were all lies? Wouldn't that be a lie? Can we just say that was a lie?
I'm saying that presidents, in the course of foreign policy and trade negotiations, every president lies to us.
I
all the
love
time.
that Destiny's
example of a
holding
single other
this.
example where
Like,
presidents
he
lied
speaks
like
so
that.
easily.
Okay,
Yeah.
I would say that every deal that the United States has
One
No,
example.
I
Okay, I'll
honestly,
give you 10 examples.
Just
I
one,
think that
Yeah, okay,
I
so the
think that
United-
Destiny. I think he should have forced a yes or no. Like, I think like that's genuinely a thing where it's like, if you don't say yes, this is a lie, then we're not moving on. Because like, he shouldn't be asking for other things that are comparable. He should be asking, this is a lie. He needs a positive claim there. I understand that he bogged like a couple minutes doing that, but I think he should have spent way more time actually forcing, yes, that is a lie.
United States, for example, lies about its dealings with terrorists. It lies about Reagan lied about.
I'm sorry, hold
about-
on. National security secrets with
We're not talking
terrorists and
about
corporate
secrets. We're not
things are
talking
not
about
economic deals. We
We're
don't
not-
lie. The American president doesn't lie to the public about economic deals.
We're not talking about national security secret. I'm talking about national security policies.
I'm
I
talking
couldn't
about
even get my
economic
pumpkin.
I'm
God
saying
damn it.
economic- For Trump, when you're dealing with foreign adversaries, the distinction between a trade deal and a hostage swap and a deal with Maduro to get out, these are all on a continuum.
Maybe that's the problem with Trump. is
That's not
every
a
single
problem.
thing with him feels like a hostage negotiation.
Well, because it is. That's the way the
I agree
world
with you.
is.
It is. That's not the way the world is, though. We
No,
haven't
it is
felt
the way
that
the
way
world
until
is.
Trump was
Do you
president.
realize
He holds
that-
our allies hostage. He has our economy hostage. He's holding immigrants hostage. Sometimes illegally detained or otherwise, and he lies to us
True.
in order to sell
Maduro-
his deals to personally enrich
Maduro
himself
has a
personally.
call with Trump. Maduro makes a call to Trump. Maduro says, I'm going now based on public reports. Maduro says, give me $100 million, thereabouts. Let me stick in there for a few months. Let my handpicked deputy Delcy Rodriguez run, and I will actually have a free election. This is Maduro in the phone call to Trump. Trump says nothing about any of this. Trump comes and says something completely unrelated, which on the
You
face
notice
of
how
it,
we're not talking about the lie about the tariffs at all. You're talking about like national security, military-related stuff. I'm just saying Donald Trump lied with the tariffs. It's very obvious that he lied. We have 0 trade deals right now, even though we say we'd have 100 deals in 100 days or 90 deals in 90 days.
are you saying, okay, let me ask you this.
I'm saying he lied with the tariff numbers.
What amount of money does the U.S. Treasury have as a result of tariffs that it wouldn't otherwise have? What is that number?
Wasn't it 200 billion or something? I don't remember. What was
You
it?
don't know.
No, because
You
it's
have
way
no
less.
idea.
Well, it's way less than what we would have gotten if we would have just not kept those tax cuts that Trump solidified with the OBBA or whatever.
So
or
you
the
don't even
150
know what it is, but you are quite sure that it would have been more if he didn't do it.
Well, I know it's in the ballpark.
And
I think
so what
it's
I'm
like
getting at
100
is,
Well, what is the number? Wait, what's the number?
you're
Yes, it's about. Isn't it about
It's a
100?
giant number, right? So the number.
Wait, you have no idea. You're
No,
just saying, I don't have an idea.
The number. Hold
I
on.
think our having no ideas are very different. My understanding is in the
We're
ballpark
talking-
of like 200 billion-ish.
Okay, I can estimate the number because we're talking about a number.
LOL.
We're talking about a $2,000 rebate to all Americans
No,
who
we're
make
not.
under $100,000.
That's not happening. That's not going to happen.
Okay, all right.
It's not. I'll bet you. I'll give you 10 to 1 odds on
Okay,
$100 if you want.
so
That'll never happen.
Let's put it this way.
Okay.
You are less curious about the actual tariff revenue benefit than you are to scoring a gotcha on a press conference where you go, Trump misrepresented the tariffs, which is admittedly a moving target, but the
No, I don't
actual
believe
benefit to
that
U.S.
you lie
citizens
about it.
is a matter of
And I'm not a
completely
big
difference
fan
to you.
of import taxes. Do you admit that a tariff is an import tax?
A tariff is an import tax that can be borne either by the no, that doesn't follow. It can be borne either by the producer or the consumer.
It's paid for by the consumer.
Okay, economic illiteracy 101. Let's look at an example.
Oh my
No,
god.
false. Let's say I'm Mercedes. Okay, I'm Mercedes-Benz, and I'm charging.
Let me
hold
cut
on.
this because I already know
Let
what
me
the
explain
explanation.
it.
No, because I already know the explanation. Make it faster. You're going to say that technically the producer or the supplier of a thing can actually decrease their prices a little bit in order to make the price a little bit more bearable at home because of the import taxes that are being paid. And you would be correct in that. An economic analysis, a true one, would yield that it's about 50-50 paid for by the consumer and the producer. That's still a bad state of affairs.
Okay.
Where we're paying an import tax, and now we have the ability to import less, and the foreign suppliers are supplying us.
Okay,
less
but-
as a result of that. If you want to go the actual econ answer, that's fine. These are the same economists, by the way, that all support central banking and
Oh
currency controls and
my
everything else, by the way.
God,
They're on the side here,
there's
they're all
still
voting
another
for as
hour
economic
of
policy as well.
this.
Well, all I'm saying is that a minute ago you said that tariffs were borne by the consumer, and then you suddenly realized that that's not true, and that Mercedes, if
No.
they're going to
No, 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 no,
increase
no,
the
no,
cost of a
no,
Mercedes,
no,
let's just say by
no, no.
$40,000,
It's not that it's not true. He said 50-50. AKA 50 by the consumer, 50 by the producer. That still means they're born by the consumers. I don't know. Okay. I can't do any more of this. It's so fucking long. And I'm so tired.